Let's begin with confession that would make any respectable skald choke on his meat. Not every Valkyrie loves her job. Yes, yes, gleaming armor, flying horses, dramatic hair in the wind, entrance music courtesy of thunder. It's a glamorous brand. But brands are not benefits. And after 3 wars before breakfast and an afternoon spent coaxing a reluctant hero out from under his own shield, I'm not dead yet, actually. Even the most dedicated chooser of the slain starts eyeing the help wanted board above the Rainbow Bridge. Our heroine is Brynja, last in her class to master the 3-point landing, hoof-heel hair toss. First to color code the Valhalla seating chart, because if you sit berserkers next to poets, everyone ends up reciting loudly. Brynja is precise, kind, catastrophically honest, and, this will be important, quietly tired. Not the dramatic, end-of-the-world tired. The soft kind that smells like wet leather and rain and sounds like a wing beat that forgot to finish. After a century and a half of collecting the bravest souls and a surprising number of men who were brave adjacent, Brynja wants something radical. She wants to break. Now, in Asgard, breaks are for bridges and occasionally for treaties. They are not for Valkyries. The whole point of a Valkyrie is that she keeps moving. But one fine dawn, fine in the Asgardian sense of gray skies, tasteful lightning, and Odin humming with administrative intent, Brynja marches into Hall of Assignments, smooths her braids, and says the words no one has ever said with straight face. All-Father, I respectfully request a gap sentry. Silence. The kind that even ravens won't peck at. Odin's one-eye narrows. He is wearing his department head cloak, which is exactly the same as his regular cloak, but with a more judgmental hem. What? He says, not quite a question, more like an indictment that tripped. A gap sentry, Brynja repeats, because she's practiced. Time to reconsider my calling. Explore alternate roles in the 9 worlds. Possibly a sabbatical in Midgard. I have a tentative syllabus. She holds up a scroll with tabs. It is color-coded. Fate, who has been known to cut threads while chewing toast, glances over, blinks, and thinks, oh dear, she's serious. From a far end of the hall comes a half cackle, half purr. Loki, naturally. He drips into moment like spilled ink, perches on a filing cabinet labeled things that won't happen if we ignore them. It's always full. And smiles with all his professionally whitened teeth. A gap sentry, he says, delighted. How progressive. Shall I endorse on social? Brynja does not look at him. She learned long ago that Loki grows when fed. Odin steeples his fingers. Valkyries do not take leave, he says. They take flight. Exactly. Brynja replies with polite brightness. I am flying toward personal development. Module 1, sleep. Module 2, find out why mortals put cinnamon in everything. Module 3, stop collecting men who only died on technicalities. This is not slander. It is a trend. Midgard has been very creative lately. Men start bar fights with furniture. Hunters, accidentally, insult sacred boars. Sailors name their boats regret, and then act surprised. Every time a fool's luck runs out, a horn sounds, a scroll updates, and a Valkyrie is dispatched to collect someone who clearly was not finished becoming a person yet. Brynja has opinions about this, unvoiced, until today. A hoof clacks softly on the marble. Her mare, Starblot, peeks around the pillar like a very large judgmental cat. She is the color of midnight and administrative dread. She has carried Brynja through blizzard and battle, and that one poetry festival where everyone insisted on dying with metaphors. She loves Brynja with the simple, stubborn love of a creature who knows your weight and has never dropped you. She flicks an ear. Translation, are we quitting the sky? Not quitting, Brynja murmurs, pausing. Enter Frades, captain of the Valkyries, armor like an argument, voice like a clean blade. Brynja, she says, carefully neutral. We are understaffed, overprophesied, and the Jarls have discovered recreational raiding in their late 30s. Now is not the time to rebrand. Brynja swallows, then does the most dangerous thing a subordinate can do in the history of hierarchies. She tells the truth without decorating it. I can still hear them, she says softly. The ones who are not ready. The ones we took because the rules said take, even though the story said stay. The room exhales. It is the wrong exhale. It's the kind that says we all know this. But we don't say it because saying it makes the wheels squeak, and squeaky wheels attract ravens with feedback. Odin's eye softens almost too quickly to see, then hardens. We serve a balance, he says. You collect those who fall. If you worry about who should not have fallen, you will never finish. I don't want to finish, Brynja says, and there it is, her quiet, impossible heresy. I want to do it right. And right now, doing it right looks like stepping away. Fate, seated in the corner with her thread box and her coffee, black, no milk, with a side of dramatic timing, taps a spindle against her knee. When fate taps, things untie. Today, something tiny loosens somewhere far away. One knot, one name, one line on one page in one mortal village ledger. None of us notice. Yet, very well. Odin says at last, in a peculiar tone worn by kings who think they are granting mercy, when really they are cornered by someone else's better story. 1 century. Conditions apply. No interference in battles. No unauthorized resurrections. No reshuffling of Valhalla's seating plan from the outside. Brynja tries to keep her face from doing the thing where relief and terror play tug-of-war across her cheeks. Thank you, she says, because politeness is armor. Loki claps like he invented sabbaticals. He will claim he did by sunset. We should throw a party, he suggests. A going-away party for duty. Cake shaped like a helmet? Invitations scented with cinnamon. No parties. Frady snaps, but her eyes, traitorous, are fond. You will keep your armor. Brynja shakes her head. I'll leave it, she says. It's loud. This startles everyone. Even Starblot, who does not approve of nudging destiny without a breastplate. But Brynja only unhooks one piece, the right pauldron, and sets it gently on his Simon's desk. The metal remembers 1,000 impacts and makes a small sound that might be history sighing. She takes the red ribbon from her braid, ties it around the pauldron's curve, and steps back. A marker, a promise. I will return different or not at all. And because the universe enjoys a comedic cutaway, we now jump gracefully, like a swan who has not read her own landing instructions, to Midgard, to a muddy village where a teenage blacksmith named Arn is not dying. He was meant to. The ledger said so. Fall from the scaffolding at noon. Mourn by 2. Remember by none. But a knot came loose under fate's tapping thumb, and the rope that should have frayed holds. Arn wobbles, curses creatively, and climbs down with all his blood inside him. He decides, for a reason that will someday become a law, to put cinnamon in his morning bread. Back in Asgard, the sky files complaint, not the loud kind with thunder, the quiet bureaucratic kind. Attention! There's a gap where a Valkyrie ought to be. Clouds whisper about coverage. A wind draft a memo. Somewhere on Bifrost, a meeting is scheduled. Brynja does not attend. She is already packing. What does a Valkyrie pack for a gap century? Not much. A cloak, soft and unremarkable. Boots that can pass for mortal. A knife sharp enough to cut fruit, thread, and the silence between two people who have never said the right thing out loud. She leaves the helmet. She takes the ribbon from her pauldron and ties it to her wrist. When she lifts her hand, the ribbon flutters like a tiny flag for a country that has not yet declared itself. Starblot snorts, offended and affectionate, as Brynja fits a humble saddle and a plain bridle. We are going quietly, Brynja tells her. Think, Stealth Swan. They set off at twilight, the time of day that forgives ambition and miscalculation equally. Brynja does not look back at the Hall of Assignments. Frades does not come to the door to watch, which is kindness disguised as discipline. Odin stands at Hlidskjalf and pretends he is not watching the small figure cross the rainbow with a horse who is trying not to clatter. Loki sits on the railing and waves like a bad omen that learned manners. Fate rolls her spindle between her fingers and, with deliberate malice, loses her pen behind a cushion. Oops, says Fate, who never says oops unless she means it. Down they go, past the polite glow of Bifrost into the soft, human dark. Midgard breathes, mud and fish and bread and fires and people. Brynja has forgotten how loud people are when they are alive. It is shocking. It is beautiful. She lands, Not in a battlefield, per her agreement, but at the edge of a market town where the baker's sign is a lopsided pretzel and the air is a warm, forgiving kind of busy. Starblot shrinks herself. Don't ask how. Horses that belong to myths have a button somewhere, and becomes merely splendid, not terrifying. Brynja ties her in the shade and walks into the noise like a woman practicing being ordinary. There are apples to buy, because someone told her apples are the taste of second chances. There is cinnamon bread, which she does not yet know is the hinge of 3 destinies and 1 furniture-polished empire. There is a boy, Arn, flirted with mortality by waving a hammer near his own foot, as boys do blissfully and often. Careful, Brynja says mildly, because she cannot help herself. He laughs, a sound like unskilled joy. Don't worry, miss. I've never once hit my foot. From somewhere very high above, 3 ravens groaned in synchronized prophecy. Truly never? Brynja asks. Never. Arn confirms and trips on absolutely nothing. The hammer misses the foot by a kiss. Brynja's hand lifts instinctively. She could adjust the air. Nudge the luck. She has done 1,000 times the ease of passing from agony to story. But the ribbon around her wrist flicks her palm like a stern ant. No interference, it says, or your gap becomes gossip. She lowers her hand. The boy does not die. He blushes the color of salvation and pretends it was part of the plan. That night, Brynja rents a room above the baker's. The bed is soft in a specific way that says someone's grandmother stuffed it with courage. She lies on her back and listens to human sleep. People murmur. They turn. They sigh. They dream in small, stubborn circles. Across the lane, someone laughs in their sleep and then apologizes to nobody. Brynja smiles into the dark and does not cry. Much. And then, at the worst possible hour, the one between too late and not yet, the sky remembers her. A single, officious thunderclap taps on the shutters. Hello? Performance review. Brynja opens a window and looks up. I file for leave, she says to the clouds, like a woman arguing with her own calendar. The clouds glow her. A memo falls. She does not read it. Just 1 century. Brynja whispers, which is not a long time if you are a mountain, and forever if you are a plan. Down in the street, the baker's apprentice, bright, sleepless, incurably nosy, stands under the eaves and stares at the woman who talks to storms. He will tell no one tomorrow. He will tell everyone in 3 weeks, in a tone that says rumor but wants miracle. As for fate, she finds her lost pen only after sunrise and pretends she didn't. In the margin of Brynja's file, she writes inactive, with a question mark so large it looks like a hook. Then she opens Arnie's ledger again, the one that should have ended yesterday, and draws a little cinnamon stick next to his name. If you ask her why, she will say aesthetics, but we both know better. So, Brynja, Valkyrie on pause, has arrived in Midgard with a ribbon, a horse who can keep secrets, and a plan to do nothing dangerous, which is adorable, because somewhere not far from that market lane, 3 men are arguing about honor. A river has decided to change its mind. A girl is practicing how to say no in a world that prefers yes, and a king has signed a peace he does not intend to keep, all of which will accidentally require a Valkyrie. Not officially, of course. Off the clock. Out of uniform. Soft-spoken. Strategic. The kind of help that looks like a question and sounds like a blessing. But that's next time. For tonight, Brynja sleeps. The sky sulks. Odin updates a policy. Loki drafts a party invite anyway. And Fate, who really should not be trusted with stationery, doodles a tiny wing over the word sabbatical and smiles like a door that has decided not to slam. Yet, the first thing Brynja notices about Midgard mornings is that they are noisy in a way battlefields never manage. Battlefields have their own soundscape. Iron on iron. Cries short and sharp. Silence creeping between blows like a shadow. But villages? Villages are a symphony of trivial chaos. People shout because death is coming on a battlefield. Here, they shout because someone borrowed a pot and didn't return it, or because the fishmonger's scales are suspiciously generous to the fish. It is the same volume, but with more onions and infinitely more gesturing. Brynja sits on the windowsill of her rented room above the bakery. legs folded under her, braid undone so the hair spills over her shoulders like a dark banner. The ribbon tied at her wrist flutters in the breeze, faintly warm as though it knows it's about to be tested again. The street smells of yeast, wood smoke, and horse. Starblot is stable behind the bakery, and already the mare has been declared the most judgmental horse anyone has ever seen, which is accurate. Starblot flicks her ears whenever mortals pass as if rating their life choices, and the baker swears the animal rolls her eyes. The baker's wife greets Brynja each morning with warm bread. Today it's a loaf dusted in cinnamon sugar. Brynja, after one bite, decides cinnamon is not just a spice. It is sorcery disguised as comfort. She files as under reasons mortals survive without wings. Right next to they invented tea, and they tell stories even when they're sad. A crumb sticks to her lip. She wipes it away with the back of her hand and looks out the street. Now, Brynja has promised herself a quiet century. Observe, don't interfere. Learn, don't lead. A sabbatical, she told Odin. A gap century, she calls it to herself. That promise lasts exactly until she steps into the market square, because mortals argue, loudly. And this morning, the entire town is arguing about a bridge. The bridge is small, made of wood, spanning a stream so shallow it would barely wet a goat's knees. And yet, important detail, it stands exactly where two clans insist the other one should not cross. It is not even a good bridge. Brynja can see 3 broken planks, frayed ropes, and a suspicious wobble when a goat walks across. But today it has become the stage for mortal pride, which is far heavier than goats. Clan 1 insists they built the bridge. Clan 2 insists they built it better first. Clan 1 waves a hammer, polished but dented. Clan 2 waves an axe, edge dull from too much emphasis. Someone's grandmother waves a ladle, and honestly, the ladle looks most dangerous of all. Children cluster at the edges, giggling nervously, waiting for drama. Merchants pretend to tidy their stalls while leaning closer to listen. Brynja sighs. She has seen this before. On battlefields, bridges are excuses for blood. Here, they are excuses for bread knives. Either way, someone always ends up in her ledger, except her ledger is in Asgard, filed under inactive. She draws her cloak tighter, muttering, "Not my problem," and tries to walk past. But the problem hears her anyway, because fate, bored and mischievous, drops her spindle just so, and the goat on the bridge slips. The plank cracks. Both clans gasp. And suddenly, the argument shifts from who owns the bridge to whose fault will it be when someone falls into the river and drowns. Mortals surge toward the banks, voices rising like startled birds. The smell of wet wood mixes with panic. Brynja inhales. The ribbon on her wrist tugs like a conscience, heat prickling under her skin. No interference, remember? She promised. Odin is watching, even if he claims he is not. Her pulse quickens. Starblot stamps a hoof somewhere behind the bakery, sensing her hesitation, which brings us to Odin. High above, from Hlidskjalf, the throne that sees, Odin leans forward, one hand cupped under his chin. Hugin mutters. She's going to interfere? Munin mutters. She's already interfering by watching. Odin mutters. She'd better not. I gave her conditions. His eye gleams storm-dark. Loki leans against the throne's armrest, eating grapes he did not ask permission to steal, and grins. She's definitely interfering. Want to bet? His grin widens like a wolf, scenting a story. Back in Midgard, Brynja folds her arms. The clans are shouting. The plank is cracking. The goat is bleeding like it has a union, and she is counting to 10 in Old Norse, which is a terrible idea because Old Norse only makes numbers angrier. She squeezes her eyes shut, hearing the voices crescendo like a drumline before battle. Finally, she exhales, steps forward, and says the single most dangerous sentence in mortal politics. "Excuse me, may I suggest something?" Her voice cuts through the uproar, like a spear through mist. The market square freezes. Mortals do not expect tall, braid-loose women with eyes like thunderclouds politely asking for suggestions. Even the goat stops mid-bleat. A breeze lifts the edges of her cloak. Solveig, somewhere in the crowd, blinks as though she's glimpsing a story stepping off a page. Brynja points at the bridge. You built it together. See the hammer cuts on one side, and the axe marks on the other? That's both clans. So perhaps you share it. Her tone is measured, almost gentle. She gestures to the planks as if presenting evidence in court. Gasps. Scandal. A toddler drops a turnip in shock. Someone mutters sharing like it's a foreign word. The goat bleats in agreement, stamping its hoof as if seconding the motion. For a moment, it works. The clans blink, mutter, reconsider. A few shoulders drop. The hammer lowers a fraction. The axe tilts. Brynja feels hope flicker. Perhaps words can do what swords cannot. And then one man shouts, "But if we share who collects the toll?" His question lands like a rock in still water. The shouting resumes, louder than before, now about money. Pride hardens again like cooling iron. The ladle grandmother brandishes her weapon with new vigor. Brynja pinches the bridge of her nose, a gesture she learned from Frigg and vowed never to use, muttering, "Mortals," louder than battlefields. Her ribbon tingles in warning. She can almost hear Odin sigh from the clouds. Starblot snorts from the stables, as if to say, "You broke your promise in record time." The horse flicks its tail and tosses its mane, glow pulsing faintly. And she has. The sky above rumbles a single, officious thunderclap. A memo from Asgard. Condition 1, no interference. Violation detected. The sound rolls across the village like a clerk stamping "denied" on a form. Brynja looks up, sighs, and mutters, "It was just a suggestion." She tilts her face toward the clouds. Suggestions count? The clouds grumble back. Suggestions count. A small spark dances across her ribbon, fading quickly. Children squeal at the static. From Hlitsjaf, Odin leans back with the air of a manager who had predicted exactly this outcome. His fingers drum on Gungnir. Loki laughs so loudly he chokes on a grape, and then conjures another one just to keep eating. Hugin preens a wing. Munnin rolls his eyes. Fate doodles a goat on the margin of her ledger, adds a tiny broken plank, and writes, "Incident number 1, bridge, goat, suggestion." She dots the I with a heart, smirking. Brynja returns to the bakery, buys more cinnamon bread, as if carbs could insulate her from divine memos, and tells herself she will do better tomorrow, which is adorable. She tears a piece of bread and feeds it to Starblot, who accepts it with a look of equine judgment. Because tomorrow, someone is going to fall in love. And mortals in love are louder than mortals arguing about bridges. Louder than thunder. Even, Brynja leans on her windowsill that night, ribbon snug, watching torchlight flicker on the bridge's repaired plank, and exhales. She can already feel the next story tugging at her sleeve. Mortals, Brynja has decided, are powered by bread, gossip, and questionable decisions made in full daylight. They run on dough and drama, the way ravens run on sky. And nowhere is that more obvious than the market square on a summer afternoon, when the sun bakes everything golden, and every word seems to travel twice as far. She only came to buy apples. A simple errand. In and out. Smile, pay leave. But simplicity is allergic to Valkyries on sabbatical. Even the air tastes like anticipation, and she can feel stories forming before she steps off the bakery stoop. The smell of warm loaves clings to her cloak, as if announcing her presence. Her ribbon pulses faintly, an ember under her sleeve. Because there he is, Arn, the blacksmith's apprentice with shoulders like a fortress and coordination like a collapsing shed. Yesterday, he nearly dropped a hammer on his own foot. Last week, he bent an iron bar in the wrong direction and nearly invented a new kind of pretzel. Today, he is red in the face and, well, let's just say he is trying very hard to flirt while carrying 2 buckets of water that are clearly winning the argument. His boots slosh, his arms shake. His expression is one of grim heroism against insurmountable odds. "Let me help," says a girl named Solveig, sweet and stubborn, with hair like barley and a smile sharp enough to win wars. She steps in as if summoned by a story's cue, takes 1 bucket before he can protest. He nearly drops the other. She laughs, bright and unguarded. He blushes so fiercely he might ignite the water he's carrying. And somewhere high above, 3 ravens groan like theater critics forced to watch a rehearsal. Yes, It is happening. Love. Loud, inconvenient love. The kind that knocks over chairs and rewrites plans. It's there in the way Solveig's hand brushes his arm, in the way Arn forgets how elbows work, in the way the market's noise dips each time they look at each other. Brynja knows the rules. She is not supposed to interfere in mortal affairs, especially not affairs of the heart, which are more dangerous than battles and twice as bloody in the long run. She has carried men from fields soaked in love and blood alike. But her Valkyrie instincts are screaming now. She can feel the threads of destiny twisting like a loom turning too fast. She glances skyward and can almost hear fate, sitting in Asgard with her spindle, lean closer, eyes sparkling, whispering, "Oh, I like this pairing." Arn, of course, ruins it immediately. He takes a step backward to regain balance, trips over a turnip cart someone left at the edge of the stall. Water spills, buckets clatter. Children shriek. Turnips roll like startled mice. He lands flat on his back, staring up at Solveig, as if she were both thunder and sunrise, breath knocked out of him. Solveig covers her face with her hands to hide her laugh, which makes it worse. Because love always sounds like laughter you're not supposed to hear, and mortals always mistake clumsiness for destiny. Brynja inhales sharply. Every Valkyrie bone in her body wants to step in, adjust the air, tilt the moment so the thread ties neatly. She lifts her hand, just a small nudge to keep the bucket upright, to still the turnips, to steady Arn. Then the ribbon on her wrist snaps against her skin like a whip. No interference. She promised. The sting blooms like a warning brand. She lowers her hand slowly, nails biting into her palm, muttering through clenched teeth, "Fine, but if they ruin this, I'm sending a memo." From Hlitskjaf, Odin is watching. He pretends he is not, of course. He strokes his beard, sighs, and says to no one in particular, "Mortals fall in love all the time. Hardly a matter for divine attention." But his eye lingers on the image in the scrying pool. Hugin and Munin exchange knowing looks. Hugin mutters, "This looks familiar." Munin mutters, "It never ends well." Their feathers twitch as if bracing for impact. Loki, sprawled nearby with grapes, he has upgraded to cheese, smirks, reclining like a man at a play he has already read. "Oh, All-Father, you're watching a romance. How adorable. Shall I fetch the mead? Or popcorn? Do we have popcorn?" Odin does not answer, but his grip on Gungnir tightens. Back in Midgard, Arn stammers an apology, cheeks still red. Solveig helps him up, her fingers brushing his again, and there is the spark, invisible to mortals, bright as fire to anyone with the eyes of Asgard. It leaps between them like static before a storm. Brynja sees it, swallows, and whispers under her breath, "Don't you dare waste it." Her ribbon pulses again, softer this time, as if echoing her hope. Fate, gleeful, scribbles in the margins of her ledger. Incident number 2, chemistry confirmed. Ship sails. She adds a tiny doodle of 2 buckets and a heart between them. She hums a tune only she can hear, the loom clicking faster. The market resumes its noise, though a little more giddy now. The buckets are righted, turnips corralled. Arn offers to buy Solveig bread to replace the produce he destroyed, which is possibly the most mortal proposal of all time. Solveig's eyes glint. She accepts, brushing flour from her skirt. A baker nearby winks, already weaving new gossip into tomorrow's loaf. Brynja turns away, clutching her apples, telling herself she has not interfered. Not really. She has only supervised, which is, of course, interference in a polite hat. Her heart beats faster anyway. She knows how fast stories travel, how quickly a thread once spun will braid itself into something larger. Starblot snorts from the stables, entirely unconvinced. The horse stamps once, shaking its mane so the faint glow ripples like lightning in silk. Brynja glares at it. "Don't look at me like that," she mutters. "I'm just buying apples." Starblot flicks an ear, a soundless liar. That night, Brynja sits by her window again, braid loose, ribbon tied around her wrist, and eats an apple slice dipped in cinnamon sugar, because mortals are geniuses when they're not fighting about bridges. Outside, the square quiets. Torches smolder down to embers. Children's laughter drifts like smoke. She tells herself she is not invested. She is just observing. She is not rooting for them. Definitely not. Her reflection in the glass raises an eyebrow back at her. And high above, Odin mutters, "This will end badly." His ravens shift uneasily. Loki grins wider, teeth catching the light like a wolf's. Fate doodles a heart next to Arn and Solveig's names, draws a tiny loaf of bread beneath it, and writes chemistry rising. Threads glimmer on her loom like morning frost. So yes, Brynja came to Midgard for peace and quiet. Instead, she has front row seats to a mortal romance, and everyone knows those never stay quiet. The ribbon on her wrist warms, not in warning this time, but in anticipation, like a harp string plucked before song. She leans on the sill, watching the last torch gutter out, and exhales. Tomorrow there will be a dance, and dances are louder than wars. She can already feel the tremor of it, like distant thunder creeping across the horizon of her sabbatical. Dances in Midgard are dangerous, not because of swords, though sometimes those appear when ale flows too freely, but because mortals insist on putting all their emotions into feet and elbows at once. They fling their hopes like confetti, stamp their frustrations into cobblestones, and whirl their desires into circles. It is chaos disguised as celebration. And naturally, Brynja ends up standing right in the middle of it, as if gravity itself has pulled her there. The village has decided that summer needs a festival. Perhaps because the harvest was good. Perhaps because gossip needs a louder drum. Banners flap from every post, dyed in colors bright enough to startle birds. Torches glow in a circle around the square, their flames swaying like conspiratorial whispers. Someone has roasted an entire pig whose expression suggests he is still confused about the invitation. His apple-stuffed mouth seems frozen mid-question. The smell of smoke, honey, and sweat thickens the air. Music starts. Fiddles sharp as laughter, drums heavy as thunder, flutes that sound like birds who overslept but decided to sing anyway. It's a clamor of life. And there's Arn, dressed in his least burned shirt, hair slicked down awkwardly, staring at Solveig as though he'd forgotten that air is necessary for life. He clutches a mug like a shield, his knuckles white. Each time Solveig moves, his gaze follows like a compass needle trembling toward true north. Brynja tells herself she is only observing. She leans against a post near the edge of the square, cloak wrapped around her, ribbon at her wrist tight, Starblot tied nearby looking deeply unimpressed. The horse flicks an ear, swishes its tail, and watches the dancers with the expression of a retired general forced to attend a children's pageant. Brynja folds her arms, repeating inwardly, not involved, not invested. But her eyes, traitorous eyes, keep tracking the awkward blacksmith apprentice, who is currently deciding whether to attempt a dance without breaking bones. The dance begins with clapping, stomping, spinning. Solveig steps into the circle, light on her feet, skirts swirling like painted fire. Her smile is radiant, and for a moment the torches seem to burn brighter just to match it. Arn hesitates, swallows hard, then stumbles in after her. The crowd cheers, because nothing delights mortals more than watching a tall man fail gracefully. The fiddler grins, switching to a faster tune as though to test him. And oh, does he fail. He trips over a child darting across the circle, collides with a drummer, and nearly decapitates himself on a banner pole. A woman squeals as a mug of mead goes flying. But every time he stumbles, Solveig steadies him with a hand on his arm, and every time their fingers touch, the crowd sighs in unison. It is, frankly, nauseating, like watching a ballad compose itself out of spilled beer and awkward steps. Brynja almost smiles. Almost, which is extremely dangerous, because a Valkyrie's smile can shift fate just as much as her blade. A genuine grin from her is like a blessing slipped into the weave. She bites the inside of her cheek until she tastes copper, muttering under her breath, "I am not invested. I am not invested." But her ribbon warms faintly, sensing her heart's tilt. Starblot snorts as if to say, "Liar." Of course, fate is watching. She sits at her loom in a place between seconds, spinning her thread and humming, adding glitter to Arn and Solveig's line, just to irritate Odin. She doodles tiny hearts along their fates and lets them shimmer like dust motes. Loki, sprawled across a windowsill in Asgard with one leg swinging idly, waves a fan he definitely stole from someone's banquet and declares, "Oh, they're adorable. Let's start taking bets on how many children." He flicks a coin into the air. Hugin groans. Munin sighs. Odin does not dignify that with an answer, but his one eye narrows, a storm brewing in its depth. Gossip, he realizes, is moving faster than ravens. And he is right. By morning, half the Nine world will have heard whispers of the Valkyrie who took a break and started matchmaking, which Brynja has not done, technically. She has only supervised, and smiled, slightly, which apparently counts when you're a legend in exile. Her smallest gestures become omens, her quiet looks, blessings. Back in Midgard, the dance swells. The music builds into a wild, joyful racket. Children clap along. Old men stomp their canes in rhythm. Solveig's braid flies loose, strands catching the torchlight like molten copper. Arn, red-faced but determined, spins her once and doesn't fall. The crowd erupts in applause, laughter rising like smoke. For a heartbeat, the whole world seems to lean closer, breath held, waiting for something. Even the stars above glitter as though curious. Bryn just sees it. She feels it. The tug of threads aligning, the shape of a story forming like frost on glass. She clenches her fist until the ribbon digs into her skin, reminding her, no interference. Her nails leave half-moons in her palm. She presses her back against the post, as if distance could dull the pull. Her eyes sting. She knows this pattern too well. Joy before tragedy, spark before storm. But the truth is simple. Mortals falling in love is like fire. You can forbid it, you can fear it, but once it sparks, it spreads. It burns away the tidy lines gods draw on maps. It melts rules into rivers. She has seen empires rise and fall on the flicker of two hands touching in a crowd. Starblot wickers softly, sensing Brynja's tension. The horse stamps once, metal shoes ringing like a muted bell. In Asgard, Odin drums his fingers on Gungnir. Loki starts humming a wedding march just to annoy him. Fate tilts her head, smiling, and threads a tiny spark of mischief into the weave. And tomorrow, that fire's going to burn hotter, because jealousy has already noticed. It sits at the edge of the dance circle wearing a man's shape, fists clenching, eyes narrowing, convinced that a spade alone once entitles him to a heart. Jealousy always wants the next dance. It waits for the music to falter, for a misstep, for a chance to spill oil on fire. And Brynja, caught between her vow and her instinct, knows she will be there when it happens, whether she wants to be or not. For now she watches, cinnamon on her tongue, thunder on the horizon, and a smile she dare not show pressing against her lips. If love is a fire, then jealousy is a bucket of oil someone always insists on throwing into it. It hisses, it flares, it blackens the air. And tonight, that someone is Eric, the kind of man who thinks flexing his biceps counts as poetry, and that loaning someone a tool creates a lifelong bond. He is a walking cautionary tale about entitlement in leather boots. Eric has decided that Solveig is destined to be his. Why? Because he once loaned her a spade. Yes, that's it, a spade. Mortals are baffling. In his mind, the act of handing over a handle of wood and steel apparently forges eternal devotion. The fact that Solveig returned it promptly, sharpened, and with a polite thank you seems irrelevant to him. Tonight, under torches and fiddles, he has mistaken opportunity for fate. The summer dance continues into the night, the square transformed by torchlight and music into something almost magical. Fiddles trill, drums thump, boots stamp. Laughter rolls like a warm tide between houses. Cinnamon and smoke mingle with the scent of sweat. Children chase each other around the edge of the circle, pretending to be warriors. Solveig laughs a little too brightly at Arnie's clumsy twirls, cheeks flushed from dancing, braid coming loose. She glows in a way only someone who feels free for a heartbeat can glow. Eric sees this, and jealousy crawls up his spine like ivy strangling a tree. He steps forward, chest puffed like a rooster late to his own song, a peacock who's lost his feathers but not his pride. A real man knows how to dance, he declares loudly, grabbing Solveig's hand without asking. His fingers clamp down like a verdict. The crowd murmurs, the music falters. Arn freezes mid-step, eyes wide. Solveig stiffens, smile vanishing like a snuff candle. Brynja feels it immediately. The wrongness, the shift in the air, the thread tugging toward a darker weave. Her instincts flare like sparks in dry grass. This is the moment where heroes fight duels, where tempers spill into blades, where stories break hearts. She has seen this pattern on 100 battlefields, in 1,000 halls. It is the breath before violence, the heartbeat before a name becomes a lament. And she promised. No interference. She swore it with a ribbon tied to her wrist. The ribbon now feels like a shackle, warm and biting against her skin. Her jaw tightens. She tastes iron at the back of her throat. The sky above the village is dark but still, clouds hanging like judges. But Brynja is still a Valkyrie. And Valkyries do not watch injustice quietly. To them, hesitation is a wound. So when Eric yanks Solveig toward the dance circle, Brynja steps forward, not as a warrior, not as a chooser of the slain, as a woman who has had quite enough of men mistaking possession for love. Her boots crunch softly on gravel. Her braid swings like a dark banner. Let her go, Brynja says, voice calm, steady, but edged with thunder. It is not loud. It does not need to be. The air itself carries it. The music stumbles. A drumbeat dies mid-strike. The crowd parts as though pushed by unseen hands. The goat, chewing a scrap of ribbon it found, freezes. Children hush. Even the torches seem to lean away. Eric blinks at her, surprised. Who are you two? His voice cracks like a boy caught stealing mead. He sees only a tall woman with a loaf of bread on a window, but something in her stance sends a splinter of doubt through his bravado. Brynja's gaze sharpens. For just a second, her old power leaks through, the weight of every battlefield she has walked, every vow she has honored, every soul she has carried to Valhalla. The ribbon pulses white-hot under her sleeve. The torches flicker. In that flicker, Eric glimpses not a villager, but a storm-wearing skin. His bravado shrivels like frost under sun. He drops Solveig's hand as though it burned him, steps back, and mutters something about the heat. Solveig exhales. Free again, her shoulders sagging in relief. She steps back into the safety of the circle, eyes wide, hand fluttering to her chest. Arn stares at Brynja like she has just punched the moon into a better orbit, admiration dawning like a sunrise he didn't expect, which is flattering but inconvenient. Eyes widen, whisper start. A story seeds itself, because above the sky growls. One thunderclap, sharp, specific, the kind of thunder that says, rule violation detected. It rattles shutters, ripples the torches, makes the goat bleed in alarm. The smell of ozone snakes through the square. On Hlitsjaf, Odin slams a hand on the arm of his throne. She swore, he thunders, his voice a storm unto itself. She promised. The ravens shift uneasily on their perches. Hugin mutters, she's interfering. Munin mutters, again. Their wings brush each other, scattering feathers like falling ink. Loki claps slowly from where he sprawled on the floor, grinning like a cat who just saw a cream trip over itself. Oh, this is delicious, he purrs. You'll have to write her up, All-Father. Shall I draft a memo? I can make it rhyme. Dear Brynja, you meddle, now feel the kettle. His laughter echoes in the hall, and Odin, grim as prophecy, begins dictating, his voice clipping each word like a blade. To Brynja, currently AWOL. Subject, breach of sabbatical agreement. Clause 2, subsection interference with mortal affairs. The quill scratches on parchment, runes flaring. Back in Midgard, Brynja feels the ribbon on her wrist sting. It does not scold. It warns. She has crossed a line, and Asgard is watching. The torches sway. The fiddler lowers his bow. The crowd stares. Her heart hammers, but her face stays calm. But Solveig is safe. Arn is still breathing. Eric is sulking in the corner, rethinking his career as a rooster. The goat shakes itself, sneezes, and resumes chewing. And Brynja, though she knows the sky is furious, feels only this: relief, Relief that she acted, that she did not let a moment curdle into harm. Relief that her instincts, though costly, still serve something larger than rules. Because sometimes breaking a rule is the only way to keep a vow. That is what she tells herself as the ribbon cools against her skin, a silent question mark. Tomorrow, of course, there will be consequences. Angry ones, divine ones, possibly memo-shaped ones. The sky will draft thunder into letters. Odin will underline in red. But tonight, there is cinnamon bread cooling on the baker's window, the smell of sugar and spice rising like a small, stubborn joy. Brynja allows herself one smile. Just one. It flickers across her face like dawn breaking over a battlefield, and it is enough to tilt fate sideways. Above the clouds, fate leans over her ledger, grins, and writes in the margin. Incident number 2. Rule broken to keep a promise. Story tilts. She sketches a tiny spade, a rooster, and a loaf of bread. Threads quiver on her loom. In the square below, music resumes softly, tentative at first, then stronger. For a moment, the village breathes again, unaware that the next act of the saga is already on its way. Brynja wakes the thunder, not the friendly kind that rolls lazily across hills like a sleepy drum. No, this is a sharp, bureaucratic kind, like the sky stamping a form in triplicate, each clap of thunder a rubber stamp, each flash of lightning a signature. The sound rattles her window panes, shakes flour dust from the beams, and makes the sparrow on her sill hop nervously. And sure enough, when she opens her shutters, a scroll is nailed to her window with a bolt of lightning. Yes, Odin has sent her a memo. The parchment still smokes faintly, edges singed with bolt-kissed wood. The nail glows dull red like an ember, runes pulsing along its shaft. Brynja sighs, reaches for it carefully, because no one enjoys being electrocuted before breakfast, and unrolls the parchment. Sparks snap along the ribbon at her wrist, as if echoing the sky's irritation. The handwriting is large, stern, and unnecessarily dramatic, each rune curved like a spearhead. To Brynja, Valkyrie, currently on sabbatical, a term which does not appear in any official ledger. Subject, breach of agreement. Infraction, interference with mortal affairs, witnessed by multiple parties, including goats. Consequence, pending. Brynja sighs louder. Goats are not witnesses. She rubs her temple, feeling the beginning of a headache. Her horse, Starblot, whinnies from the stable as though agreeing. From the street below, a goat bleats in perfect contradiction, sounding very much like objection sustained. Somewhere, a child giggles at the coincidence. The baker's wife hears Brynja muttering and pokes her head out the window opposite. Hair in curlers, flower on her cheek. Talking to the sky again, dear? Yes, Brynja replies, deadpan. It started it. The woman chuckles, retreats, and shuts her shutters, leaving Brynja with parchment and thunder. Brynja rolls up the memo, tucks it into her satchel, and tells herself she will absolutely not argue with paper. She has sworn this to herself before. It lasts exactly until she gets to the market and unrolls it again. You don't understand context, she informs the parchment as she walks between stalls. I didn't interfere. I intervened, which is different. Interference is selfish. Intervention is necessary. You would know this if you'd ever tried to stop a man named Eric from throwing a stool. She gestures with an apple to emphasize her point. The parchment does not reply, but the sky rumbles with the kind of thunder that says, nice try. A gust of wind ruffles her hair like a disapproving father. Several villagers glance up nervously at the clouds, but no rain falls. Meanwhile, in Asgard, Odin sits on his throne, reading the carbon copy of his own memo, jaw set. His ravens perch on either armrest, their heads tilted in opposite directions like a pair of judgmental bookends. Hugin mutters. She's arguing with it. Munin mutters, out loud. Their feathers puff with exasperation. Loki sprawls on the floor, laughing so hard he nearly chokes on an olive he's stolen from someone's plate. Oh, father, she's debating stationery. Can we frame this? Please. He rolls onto his back, grinning at the vaulted ceiling. A Valkyrie with sabbatical arguing semantics with thunder. This is my kind of saga. Odin ignores him, eyes fixed on the scrying pool, showing Brynja at the market. His knuckles tighten on Gungnir. She thinks rules are arguments, he mutters. Rules are bones. He flicks his hand, runes glowing briefly on his palm. Back in Midgard, Brynja buys apples, nods politely to Solveig, and pretends she doesn't see our nearly hammers thumb into legend while fixing a horseshoe. The ribbon on her wrist itches, an uncomfortable reminder that her leash is short and tugged from the sky. She tucks the parchment deeper into her satchel, but feels its weight as though it were a chain. And yet she feels lighter. She kept Solveig safe. She tilted the story just a little. The world did not break. The sky is cranky, yes, but the village is intact. Children still play. Bread still bakes. Goats still plot their fainting. Maybe rules are more flexible than Odin wants to admit. Maybe she's not bending them so much as testing their seams. A thrill flickers in her chest. Half guilt, half freedom. Overhead, a cloud shifts shape like a face frowning. But far above, on a plane mortals cannot see, Fate sits at her desk, sipping morning coffee, while updating the ledger. Her quill hovers over the line meant to read. Infraction logged. Pending consequence. She's supposed to be impartial. She's supposed to record, not interfere. Instead, she spills coffee across the page. The ink smears. The runes twist. And where pending should be, the blot reshapes itself into possibility. Fate stares at the stain, tilts her head, and taps her spindle against the rim of her cup. A smile tugs at the corner of her mouth. Oops, she murmurs. She doodles a little coffee cup next to the line and lets the ink dry. Threads tremble on her loom. And just like that, Brynja's Gap Century gains another crack in its rules. Small, barely visible, but cracks spread. They always do. In the language of fate, possibility is a wedge, and wedges make space for change. In the language of sagas, a single smudge can change a prophecy. Tomorrow, a traveler will arrive in the village, and travelers, as every Valkyrie knows, never bring peace. They bring stories, and stories, once loosed, can fly farther and faster than any raven. Brynja lifts her eyes from the apples she's bagging and feels the air shift. A subtle forewarning only someone who's walked between worlds would notice. She tightens a ribbon on her wrist, squares her shoulders, and bites into her cinnamon bread. For now, the sky is only grumbling. For now, travelers are like ravens. They never show up quietly. They always bring news you didn't ask for, and they tend to leave feathers everywhere. They drop stories the way ravens drop bones, half as warning, half as gift. And this particular traveler, from the first creak of his cart wheels, already smells of trouble. He arrives at the village on a squeaky cart, pulled by an exhausted mule, who looks personally offended by existence, ears flicking back with every bump in the road. The cart is draped in faded banners of places no one in the village has seen. The wheels creak a rhythm like a funeral march. The mule exhales clouds of dust as if sighing at its own fate. His name is Halvard. He wears too many cloaks for summer, layers upon layers like the pages of a book he hasn't decided which to open. Each cloak a different color, each hem embroidered with symbols no one can quite place. He carries a bag that jingles with secrets, bottles, trinkets, bits of runestone, and smiles like a man who has learned the art of selling gossip as prophecy. His eyes are bright but restless, always darting for the next listener. He is a merchant of murmurs, a peddler of half-truths wrapped in mystery. The village children swarm him instantly. They orbit the cart like little moons, eyes wide, hands reaching for shiny things peeking from his bag. Adults follow at a slower pace, pretending not to care, but leaning closer anyway, ears cocked like foxes. No one in the village admits to liking gossip, but everyone listens. A handful of elders stand back, murmuring prayers they only half remember. Even the goat edges nearer, sniffing suspiciously at Halvard's boots. Brynja watches from the bakery steps, ribbon tied at her wrist under her sleeve, loaf of cinnamon bread in hand. She tells herself she will not get involved. Travelers mean stories, and stories mean trouble. She is here to observe, not to untangle. Her braid is loose, her cloak plain, every inch of her posture arranged to say, ordinary. But the ribbon pulses like a heartbeat she cannot slow. Halvard hops down from the cart with a flourish, dust rising around him. He bows low, spreading his arms, and the children giggle. "Good folk," he booms, voice trained from markets and courts alike. "I bring news from the wide world." He lets the sentence dangle just long enough for curiosity to hook everyone. But Halvard's first words are impossible to ignore. "They say Valkyrie has left Asgard," he announces, dramatic as thunder, eyes glinting. "They say she walks among mortals, ribbon on her wrist, horse with eyes like storms. They say she has broken her vow." Each, they say, is a hammer strike. Each pause draws the crowd tighter. The crowd gasps. The baker drops a tray. A loaf bounces off a cobblestone and lands in a puddle. The goat bleats ominously, stamping its hoof as if adding an exclamation point. A woman clutches her necklace. Children crane their necks skyward, as if expecting wings to blot out the sun. Brynja nearly chokes on her bread. She coughs, trying to look casual, as though she isn't literally the headline. She lowers her eyes, wishing herself into invisibility. Starblot, tied discreetly nearby in the shadows of the stable, rolls her eyes and flicks her glowing tail. Subtlety has never been a horse's specialty. Her mane practically hums under the overcast light. Arn whispers to Solveig, "Do you think it's true?" His voice is low but trembles with excitement, like a boy hearing his first war story. Solveig shrugs, eyes wide, clearly imagining heroes hiding among them. "If it is, why here?" she murmurs. Brynja stares at her shoes, hoping mortals don't recognize destiny when it's standing in line for bread. But she can feel their glances like the prickle of static, curiosity threading around her like a net. Meanwhile, in Asgard, Odin has just received Halvard's gossip through Raven Express. Hugin and Munin drop the words at his feet, their wings shedding black feathers across the marble floor. Odin reads a message aloud, jaw tightening. "Bold letters," he growls, slamming his fist on the throne. The hall trembles. The banners sway. "She courts mortals like Skald's court rhyme," he mutters. He seizes a fresh scroll and writes in heavy strokes. To Brynja, infraction now public, consequence escalating. Yes, he actually writes escalating in all caps. He underlines it 3 times, the quill biting into the parchment. Loki leans over his shoulder, chuckling softly, upside down on the armrest like a lounging cat. Oh, she's famous now. Mortals whisper her name, gods draft memos. Next step, fan clubs. He produces a small flyer that reads Brynja Fan Society. Applications open just to watch Odin's eye twitch. Odin ignores him, but the corner of his mouth tightens like a man chewing bitter herbs. Back in Midgard, Halvard is not done. He lowers his voice, just enough to make everyone lean closer, and the crowd obliges like iron to a magnet. They say she protects mortals. They say she changes fates. And they say Odin watches her every move. The way he says it makes the air colder. The villagers cross themselves with gestures half remembered from grandmothers. Someone spits over their shoulder. Children look skyward nervously. Arn mutters, "If that Valkyrie is here, I'd like to thank her." Solveig elbows him, whispering, "Don't be foolish. She'd never hide in a place like this." But her eyes flick back to Brynja all the same, a small seed of wonder sprouting behind her irises. Brynja mutters under her breath, "Correct. I'm absolutely not here, eating cinnamon bread on the steps." Her voice is dry as winter wind, but no one hears her over the murmurs. The ribbon pulses once, tight as a warning. She adjusts her grip on the loaf as though it's a shield. But fate is listening. Fate always listens. And fate, still doodling in the ledger, writes in the margin with a flourish. Incident number 3. Secrets are just gossip waiting for a drum. She sketches the little drum with goat horns. Then she tips her spindle, and somewhere in the crowd, a little girl on her father's shoulders points directly at Brynja. "Her!" The girl says cheerfully, finger outstretched. She has a ribbon. The square falls silent. Not the soft hush of curiosity, but the brittle silence of revelation. All eyes turn. The murmurs vanish. A bird chirps once and then shuts up. Brynja exhales slowly, clutching her loaf like a shield, feeling the weight of 100 stairs pin her to the steps. Starblot shifts in the stable, hooves scraping stone, sensing her rider's pulse. Tomorrow, she realizes, will not be quiet. Tomorrow, she will have to answer. The ribbon burns hotter. Overhead, a raven wheels in a slow circle, black against the pale sky, as though writing punctuation in the air. And far above, in Asgard, Odin folds a scroll with a snap. "Prepare the inspectors," he says, his voice ablade. Loki grins like a man already selling tickets. And fate underlines her note 3 times, a small smile curving her lips. The drumbeat of rumor has become a summons. The entire village is staring at Brynja, which is not ideal when you're trying to have a gap century incognito. Dozens of eyes, brown, blue, gray, young, lined with years, fix on her as though she's an omen carved in stone. Even the chickens have paused their pecking. A hush settles over the square, thick as flour dust. Somewhere a cart creaks. Somewhere else, the wind holds its breath. She clears her throat, clutches her loaf of cinnamon bread tighter, and says the most convincing word she can muster. "Me? A Valkyrie? Absolutely not. I am a weaver." The words come out too smooth, like a script read too often, and hang in the air like a badly thrown spear. Silence. Then a boy pipes up from behind a crate of apples. "But you're too tall." His voice squeaks, but the words land. Heads nod. Murmurs ripple outward like concentric circles in water. "And your horse glows," adds another, a girl with braids and flour on her cheeks. "And you talk like thunder," says Solveig, wide-eyed, hands clasped in front of her as though she's holding back a prayer. Brynja forces a smile, the kind mortals mistake for reassurance, but really means "please stop noticing me." Many women are tall. Horses sometimes glow. And thunder is just projection. She tries a small laugh. It sounds like a cough. It is not convincing. At all. Her ribbon pulses under her sleeve. A faint warmth climbing her arm like embarrassment turned to heat. She shifts her loaf of bread to the other hand, as if that might change her shape. Meanwhile, Halvor the Traveler beams from the edge of the crowd. Thrilled as gossip is playing out live. He's the kind of man who loves nothing more than to be proven right in public. "Ah, you deny it," he cries, pointing like an eager storyteller, which is exactly what a Valkyrie would do. His words carry over the square like sparks over dry grass. The crowd murmurs, voices overlapping. "Could it be? She looks like the one in my grandmother's tales. Maybe she's here to judge us." Curiosity twines with fear until it's impossible to tell them apart. Arn frowns thoughtfully, then blurts. "If she is a Valkyrie, she saved Solveig from Eric the other night, didn't she?" His voice trembles between admiration and accusation. The square gasps again. All heads swivel to Solveig, whose cheeks flush crimson. Brynja's ribbon tightens on her wrist like a tattletale, a band of heat reminding her of O's she's already bent. She sighs. "I only suggested civility." She remembers the moment clearly. A sharp word, a glance, and Eric backing away without knowing why. No magic, just presence. Yet presence is its own kind of power, which is basically a miracle, mutters someone at the back. Laughter nervous as wind chimes follows. Brynja's stomach knots. Up in Asgard, Odin groans, pinching the bridge of his nose. She denies nothing. She denies everything. It's worse. His voice echoes down marble halls lined with banners of old victories. Ravens hop along the balustrade, feathers glinting. He waves for a raven. "Prepare an inspection." Hugin squawks assent. Munin mutters. Inspection means you don't trust your own memos. Odin ignores him, staring at the swirling image of the village in his scrying pool. Loki sprawls across the steps of the high seat, grinning like a playwright whose drama has just been renewed for another season. "Oh, All-Father," he drawls, twirling a grape between thumb and finger. "Shall I narrate? Brynja the Valkyrie, accused by gossip, betrayed by bread, revealed by ribbon. Audience loves it." He throws the grape into the air and catches it in his mouth. 5 stars. Would watch again. Odin glares. "Enough." The word cracks like a whip. But Loki only smiles wider, stretching like a cat in a sunbeam. Back in Midgard, Brynja attempts damage control. She sets down her bread slowly on the edge of the fountain, straightens her cloak, and declares, "Even if I were a Valkyrie, which I am not, I would hardly spend my time in this village. I would be elsewhere with more important things to do." Her voice is calm, but the villagers hear a tremor of wings beneath it. "Like what?" Solveig asks, curious, stepping forward despite the murmurs. Brynja freezes. The question is small but sharp. "Like weaving?" It's the first word she finds, and it falls flat on the stones. The children laugh, not cruelly but in delight, sensing the awkwardness like a game. Someone whispers, "Weaving what?" "Fate." The goat bleats again unhelpfully, stamping its hoof as if to underline the joke. Its eyes seem almost knowing. Brynja exhales the sound heavy, carrying the weight of centuries of silence. The truth is, mortals are already writing her into their stories, whether she admits it or not. Every denial only adds another verse. Every quiet act of protection becomes a miracle in their mouths. Denying only makes her taller in their eyes, a shadow stretching toward legend. And tomorrow, when Odin's inspection arrives, denial will not be enough. She can feel it already, the shimmer of truth, the weight of runes, the eyes of Asgard turning. Her ribbon pulses once more, not as a threat, but as a question. She doesn't answer. Fate, watching from her corner outside time, doodles in the ledger. Incident number 4. Denial is confession with better posture. She draws a little loaf of cinnamon bread. Next to the note, a goat nibbling at it. She taps the page, satisfied, and sips her tea, knowing the threads are tightening. Above the bakery, the night air smells of flour and coming rain. Inside, Brynja lies awake, staring at the ceiling, the villagers' voices still echoing in her head. Below, Solveig whispers prayers and Arm pretends not to be afraid. The goat curls under the window, eyes half shut, and far above, in Hlidskjalf, Odin's patience thins like ice in spring. By dawn, the gossip has traveled faster than smoke. It slithers from window to window, carried on the breath of bakers, fishmongers, and children who should be in school but have far better things to whisper. By noon, Odin's inspectors arrive. The shift from rumor to reality is like a door slammed in mid-laughter. Now, if you're imagining grim warriors and polished mail with scrolls tucked under their arms, you are only half right. The inspectors are grim, yes. Their armor gleams, yes. The sun glints off rune-etched pauldrons, making them look like walking thunderheads. But each also carries a clipboard, because nothing says divine authority like a clipboard. The boards are carved from ash wood, inlaid with silver, and bristle with quills that hum faintly. They do not merely record. They judge. They march into the square, boots in perfect rhythm, ravens circling overhead like punctuation marks in a sentence only Odin understands. Each step lands with the weight of laws older than the village. The villagers scatter, whispering, as if the sound of order itself were contagious. Mothers pull children back by their collars. An old man shuts his shutter with a snap. Arn tries to look brave, chin high, hammer in hand, but his knuckles are white. Solveig pulls him back by his sleeve, correctly guessing bravery plus bureaucracy equals disaster. Her eyes flick to Brynja, a silent question. Brynja, meanwhile, sits very calmly on the bakery steps, braid loose, ribbon hidden under her sleeve, loaf of bread on her lap. She is a picture of innocence. Almost. She tears small pieces from the loaf and feeds them to a sparrow, pretending her pulse isn't climbing. The smell of yeast and flour clings to her cloak, masking the faint scent of ozone that always follows her. In her chest, the ribbon pulses once, a quiet heartbeat. The lead inspector clears his throat. It's a small sound, but in the charred square it rings like a gavel. "We are here to investigate rumors of Valkyrie interference." His voice is crisp, precise, no room for argument. He gestures with his quill, and runes spark in the air. Gasps from the crowd. A few villagers cross themselves in old, half-remembered gestures. The baker drops another tray with a clatter, flour rising like smoke. The goat bleats dramatically as if rehearsed. Even the sparrow hops away from Brynja's fingers. Brynja lifts her head, blinking politely. "How exciting. I do hope you find her." Her tone is airy, but her hands tighten on the bread. She feels every eye pivot toward her like sunflowers to light. The inspector narrows his eyes, quill poised. Your name? Brynja, she answers automatically, instantly regretting it. Her own name tastes suddenly dangerous. Which means armor, the inspector mutters, scribbling on his clipboard. Suspicious. The quill scratches like claws. A rune flickers briefly at the edge of the board. Before she can reply, another voice cuts through the square. Smooth, mocking, delighted. I object. Yes, Loki. He appears lounging on the well, grapes in hand. Where does he keep finding them? Grinning like this is the best show Midgard has staged in centuries. His boots dangle over the edge, cloak spilling like ink. You can't just accuse my client of being a Valkyrie without evidence, he purrs. She clearly said she's a weaver. Look at her. Does she not look weavery? He waves a grape at Brynja, like a lawyer brandishing evidence. The inspectors glare, unimpressed but momentarily derailed. Brynja mutters under her breath, I did not hire you. You couldn't afford me. Loki whispers back, leaning closer, his grin a private knife. Then he straightens loud again. But in my infinite generosity, I am representing you pro bono. You're welcome. He bows with a flourish that nearly topples his grapes. The crowd gasps again. Solveig looks impressed, biting her knuckle to keep from laughing. Arn looks confused, mouthing pro bono like it a new kind of bread. The goat looks smug, chewing nothing at all, as if it understands a joke better than anyone. The inspector sighs, pinching the bridge of his nose under his helm. We are not here for trials. We are here for verification. He raises a hand, chanting softly, and suddenly the air shimmers. It's not mere heat haze, but a net of runes, threads of light weaving through the square, brushing against walls and skin. Magic lies, after all, are harder to maintain under inspection. Brynja holds her breath. Her ribbon stings under her sleeve, a warning pulse. Starblot stomps nervously in the stable's 2 streets over, sensing the spell. The shimmer spreads closer, humming like truth itself, crawling like frost over cobblestone. Villagers shift uneasily, their whispers dying. Children press into their mother's skirts. Arn reaches for his hammer, as though it could block light. Solveig's hand trembles near her mouth. Loki, of course, beams. Relax, he whispers. I'll distract them. He pops another grape into his mouth, green juice glinting on his teeth. This is the worst sentence anyone can hear in Loki's voice. Because distracting, in his dictionary, means setting something on fire. And as the shimmer of truth creeps closer to Brynja's ribbon, as the inspectors lean in, as the villagers hold their breath, Loki tilts his head and considers the goat, his smile widening. The air tastes of mead and mischief. Somewhere in Asgard, fate puts down her teacup, sensing a turning point. She writes in the margin, Incident number 4, verification phase. Trickster poised. Brynja's pulse hammers. She keeps her face serene, bread balanced in her lap, but her wings ache under her skin. She knows she is seconds away from exposure, from sabbatical shattered, from stories turning into chains. And above, in Hlitsjaf, Odin leans forward on his throne, one eye bright as lightning, waiting for the shimmer to do its work. The shimmer of truth is crawling across the square, humming like an impatient bee, a thin film of light rippling over cobblestones, stalls, and faces. It smells faintly of ozone and salt, a spell designed to strip lives from shadows. Brynja watches it creep closer, inch by inch, like dawn sliding under a door. She knows she can't hide forever. If the spell reaches her ribbon, her sabbatical is over, and her carefully built career as mysterious weaver ends before it begins. Every beat of her heart feels like a drum calling her name. Around her, the villagers watch the shimmer too, though they don't understand what it is. They murmur and shuffle, some fascinated, some afraid. The inspectors, stern, pale-robed emissaries of Asgard, stand with their staves planted, eyes glowing faintly as they guide the magic. Children peek from behind barrels. A dog whines. The goat, naturally, stands right in the middle of the path as if waiting to be tested. And then Loki, true to his word, which is always the most dangerous truth of all, distracts. With fire. Not a small fire. Not a candle or a torch. No. Loki snaps his fingers, and suddenly the goat's beard bursts into brilliant green flames, crackling and sparkling like emerald fireworks. It illuminates the square in eerie color, making shadows jump like dancers on the walls. The goat, to its credit, handles this with admirable professionalism. It freezes for a second, blinks slowly, bleats once, loudly, accusingly, and then sprints through the square, scattering children, upsetting market stalls, and creating the exact level of chaos Loki thrives on. Apples roll underfoot. A wheel of cheese bounces off a cart. Chickens explode into flight. Feathers snowing down on panic heads. See, Loki declares, pointing dramatically, cloak swirling. Clearly that is your Valkyrie, a goat with divine fire. Inspect it at once. His voice drips with innocence no one believes. The inspectors groan in unison. Mortals scream and scatter. The baker faints into a sack of flour, leaving a perfect silhouette of himself like a cartoon. A fiddler clutches his instrument to his chest and hides under his stool. The shimmer of truth wavers, confused by the sudden motion. Brynja, caught in the swirl of panic, nearly forgets herself. Her instincts surge like a tide. One flick of her old power, and the flames would vanish. The goat soothed, the crowd calmed. Her hand lifts instinctively, fingers trembling. She can almost feel the cool rush of magic in her veins, the way she used to wield it on battlefields. But the ribbon stings her wrist, sharp as a thorn warning, no interference. Not again. One more violation, and her sabbatical will unravel completely. So she clenches her fist and does nothing, which, for Valkyrie, feels harder than battle. Her jaw aches from restraint. Her breath comes short. She watches the goat blaze a trail of chaos, watches villagers slip on rolling apples, watches the shimmer curl away from its intended path, and forces herself still. Arn, bless his clumsy bravery, charges after the goat with a bucket of water. He misses. Twice. Once he throws the water on a barrel. The second time he soaks himself. Solveig snatches a bucket from his hands, steps forward with a focus born of desperation, and hurls it perfectly. The water arcs through green fire like a comet and douses the flames in one smooth throw. The goat shakes itself, damp and offended, but otherwise intact, its beard steaming. The crowd cheers spontaneously, relief bubbling into applause. The inspectors, however, are not impressed. They straighten, robes smudged with dust and flour, and turn back to Brynja, narrowing their eyes. Strange, the leader mutters, voice like iron filings. The shimmer passed over her, yet nothing revealed. But the villagers look at her as though she carries lightning in her pocket. His companion scribbles furiously on a clipboard with a quill that hisses each stroke. Subject suspicious. Denies everything. Accompanied by trickster interference. Goat inconclusive. The words glow briefly before sinking into parchment. Around them the villagers whisper more fiercely than ever. Children tug at their mothers, pointing at Brynja with wide eyes. She didn't even move, someone says. She looked like she knew. Another swears they saw sparks under her sleeve. Stories begin to germinate in the churned earth of panic and relief. Meanwhile, Loki is doubled over laughing on his rooftop, wiping tears from his eyes with one hand, and tossing coins into the air with the other. "Oh, that was worth it," he wheezes between laughs. "A flaming goat. Best distraction I've staged in centuries. I'll have to do it again at the next equinox." He flicks a feather at a passing raven, smirking. Brynja glares up at him, her eyes dark with warning. "You nearly exposed me." "Nonsense." Loki purrs, sitting up and balancing on the edge of the roof with impossible grace. "I made you more mysterious. Mystery is better than truth. Trust me, I've made a career of it." He twirls a coin and lets it vanish in green smoke. The inspectors, defeated by paperwork, scorched stalls, and a goat whose beard now smells of mint, march back to Asgard with their confusing report. Their boots leave neat impressions in spilled flour. The shimmer of truth dissipates like mist under sun. Brynja exhales, relief flooding her chest in a rush that makes her knees weak. She is safe. For now. But as the villagers gather to whisper about her, as Arn and Solveig share another glance lit by sparks only fate can see, Brynja realizes her sabbatical is unraveling faster than a mortal's patience on market day. Her disguise is not a disguise anymore, but a story being written without her hand. Even the goat, drying its beer by the bakery, watches her like it knows. And Odin, reading the report hours later in his high hall, sighs deeply, the sound rattling banners. "What do you mean, goat inconclusive?" he growls, glaring at the parchment as if it might apologize. Gumnir hums in the corner, like a storm waiting for release. Frigg sips her tea and raises an eyebrow. Fate doodles a little goat with flames in its beard and writes in the margin, "Incident number 4, thread fraying." Loki just grins, stretching out on the roof of the hall, as though it were his private stage. "Oh, father," he murmurs to no one in particular, "you have no idea how entertaining this sabbatical is going to get." And down in Midgard, Brynja tightens a ribbon on her wrist, closes her eyes, and wonders how much longer she can hold still while the shimmer of truth circles ever closer. Reputations are like bread dough. Leave them alone for a few hours, and they rise out of control. And after the flaming goat incident, Brynja has won. What began as a handful whispered, "Did you see?" at the market has become a slow rolling thunder through every lane, weaving itself into the smell of smoke and flour. By sunrise, the village is whispering not just about the tall woman with thunder in her voice, but about the strange shift in luck that seems to follow her like a shadow of light. They tell each other murmurs over washing basins and bread ovens. Accidents seem to stop when she's around. The cart that should have rolled downhill, stuck on a pebble as if a hand held it. The child who nearly toppled into the well, saved by a rope that hadn't been tied before, but was somehow there when needed. The fish that usually refused to bite, practically leaping into baskets, gleaming scales flashing like coins. Chickens lay more eggs. Milk doesn't sour. It is as if the air itself bends around her, softening edges. Brynja insists she's done nothing, which is technically true. She has not called lightning, has not whispered runes, has not bent the Norns threads, but try telling that to mortals who already want a miracle. In their eyes, miracles are not facts but stories, and stories do not care about disclaimers. And then Solveig makes it worse. One evening, after Arn has nearly set his own sleeve on fire again, trying to light a lantern with a sparkstone, Solveig pulls Brynja aside behind the bakery. The smell of rising bread mixes with the sharper scent of ash. Warm light spills in the window onto cobblestones. Her cheeks are pink, her eyes wide, her voice hushed like a secret handed across generations. "You're not just a weaver, are you?" Brynja freezes mid-motion, fingers still clutching the edge of her shawl. The ribbon stings under her sleeve, a tiny brand. "Of course I am. I weave things." Her voice is flat but careful, choosing each word like stepping stones in a stream. Solveig tilts her head, her braids slipping over her shoulder. "I saw how Eric looked at you when you told him to stop. Like you weighed more than his pride. And how the inspectors couldn't find anything, but they still walked away afraid. And how Arn smiles when you speak, like you make him braver." Her tone isn't accusing, it's awed. Brynja swallows hard. "That doesn't prove," she begins, but the words falter. "It proves enough," Solveig says softly, stepping closer. "If you're a Valkyrie, then thank you for choosing to be here, for choosing us." Her eyes glisten, reflecting torchlight and something older than hope. The words land heavier than any spear. They are not a demand, but a blessing. Brynja almost says the truth. Almost. Her throat tightens. The ribbon at her wrist pulses like a heartbeat ready to burst. She imagines wings unfurling, confession spilling like water over a dam. But she bites it back, because truth is dangerous, and confession spread faster than fire. She simply nods once, a gesture so small yet so full it feels like an oath. Solveig smiles with relief, as if silence itself is an answer, and slips back inside, leaving the smell of bread and secrecy behind. Meanwhile, in Asgard, Odin is pacing. The inspector's report lies on his desk. Subject suspicious. Goat inconclusive. He growls, the sound echoing off marble columns like distant thunder. His ravens exchange nervous glances, feathers puffed. The high seat feels smaller than usual, its carvings more like a cage than a throne. We need certainty. Send Thor. Terrible idea, mutters Frigg from her loom without looking up, threads glinting under her fingers. She knows how this will go. Terrible idea, mutters Heimdall from his post at Bifrost, eyes already seeing commotion. Wonderful idea, purrs Loki, lounging in a shadowed alcove, already imagining Thor storming into a market square and demanding, "Are you a Valkyrie? Answer honestly," while Brynja rolls her eyes. His grin sharpens at the edges like a blade. But Odin is tired, cornered by gossip, and kings under pressure do foolish things. He drums his fingers on Gungnir, each tap sparking a faint crackle of lightning, and mutters, "Prepare the Thunderer." The ravens launch in the rafters, black streaks in a hall of gold. Back in Midgard, Brynja lies awake in her little room above the bakery. The ceiling beams creak softly. The smell of yeast rises through floorboards. The ribbon is tight around her wrist, glowing faintly in the dark like an ember she cannot shake off. She wonders how long she can keep pretending, how long she can keep her wings folded and her name hidden. Outside, Arn hums a tune while fixing a bent horseshoe by lamplight, hammer strokes awkward but steady. Solveig whispers prayers to the stars, her window open to catch a breeze. The goat snores on the bakery's eaves, twitching as if dreaming of heroism. And Fate, in the corner of her ledger, doodles lightning bolts and little goats and writes in curling script. Incident number 5, incoming disaster with muscles. She underlines muscles twice, adds a tiny hammer doodle, and takes another sip of tea, smiling to herself. Because the dough of reputation has risen, the oven of conflict is hot, and the thunderer is already on his way. Subtlety is not in Thor's vocabulary. Neither is quiet entrance. He has a hammer for a voice and lightning for footsteps. So when Odin sends him to investigate Brynja's sabbatical, he does not slip into the village disguised as a traveler or stroll in pretending to buy bread. There is no hooded cloak, no false name, no coins ready for a loaf. He chooses spectacle over stealth because that is what he knows. No, Thor arrives on a thunderbolt. Literally, the sky cracks open as if torn by invisible claws. A jagged seam of light splits the clouds, spilling white-blue fire across the heavens. Birds scatter in a flurry of wings. Market awnings flap violently, knocking over baskets of onions. Children shriek and cling to their mothers. Lightning smashes into the market square with a crack that rattles teeth and knocks dust from beams. When the light clears, there stands a god of thunder himself, tall, broad, hair shining like a shampoo commercial, hammer glowing ominously, cloak snapping like a banner at war. Sparks dance at his boots where cobblestones still hiss from the strike. Half the villagers scream, the other half faint. A dog howls and hides under a cart. The goat faints twice, leg stiff, eyes roll back, then stirs just long enough to bleed an accusation before collapsing again. It is, in short, an entrance. Where's the Valkyrie? Thor booms. His voice reverberates off the market stalls, making apples bounce in their baskets. A barrel of fish rolls over and spills into the street. Somewhere in the back, a baby begins to wail. Brynja, standing 3 feet away with a basket of apples, panics gracefully, which is to say, she freezes, smiles politely, and says, "Welcome, traveler. Might I interest you in some produce?" Her tone is mild, but her grip on the basket is white-knuckled. The ribbon at her wrist pulses once under her sleeve like a heartbeat she is trying to hide. Thor blinks at her, then at the apples. "No, I seek a warrior maiden on sabbatical." His eyes scan the crowd, lingering on helmets that are actually pots and on pitchforks held a little too tightly. The villagers immediately point at Brynja. All of them, in perfect unison. Even the children. Even the goat, who is revived just to bleed accusingly before swooning once more. Fingers stretch toward her like a field of arrows, and the murmur of whispers rises like a tide. Brynja sighs. Traitors. Her shoulders slump an inch, but her eyes remain calm. She sets the basket down slowly, as if to keep the apples from rolling like witnesses. Meanwhile, Loki is perched on a rooftop, grinning from ear to ear. He has conjured himself a little canopy to shade his mischief, scroll in one hand, coin pouch in the other. "Tickets, get your tickets," he cries. Front row seats to divine family drama. 2 copper for insults, 3 for lightning strikes. Add a copper if you wanted to heckle Thor personally. The children cheer and line up, clutching turnips and buttons and anything shiny enough to barter. A few adults exchange glances and sidle over too. In the sunlight, Loki's teeth flash like a blade. Back on the ground, Thor narrows his eyes at Brynja. "Your name?" His tone is more puzzled than accusatory, like a man who knows he's being played but can't see the trick yet. "Brenna." She lies smoothly, adding an extra end like a disguised mustache. Her face is serene, but the ribbon under her sleeve burns hotter. Thor frowns, his brows knitting, suspicious. "You look like a Valkyrie." He circles her slowly, hammer low but humming faintly. The villagers hold their breath, as if the wrong word might summon lightning. Brynja shrugs, a tilt of the head that makes her braids sway. "I look like many things. Weavers, bakers, librarians. You'd be surprised what a good book can teach about dodging hammers." Her voice drips with polite irony. Thor scratches his beard. "But you smell like battle." His eyes soften slightly, the way a wolf's eyes soften when it recognizes another predator. He tilts his head as if catching an old scent, iron frost, burning mead halls. Memories of battlefields where winged figures hovered above fallen warriors stir in his mind. The villagers gasp at the word battle. Solveig bites her lip, glancing at Brynja with something like pride. Arn drops his hammer on his foot. Again, the clatter jolts a few chickens into flight. Even the goat twitches as though about to faint for a third time, but heroically holds on. Brynja exhales slowly. The ribbon burns at her wrist, reminding her the rules etched into her bones. Deny. Do not confess. No interference. Her wings itch with the urge to unfurl, but she keeps them still. Thor stares heavy, and the villagers whispers heavier still, a pressure pressing her toward revelation. Finally, she mutters, "If I were Valkyrie, which I am not, I would be on a well-earned break, and I would very much like to enjoy my apples in peace." She lifts one apple and bites into it deliberately, juice glinting on her lip. The defiance is subtle but visible. The market falls silent. A cartwheel creaks. Even the breeze seems to pause. Thor stares at her, eyes narrowed, hammer humming. And then, miraculously, he laughs. Loud, booming, startling birds out of trees and rattling signs. His laughter is not mocking but genuine, rolling out like a sudden summer storm. A break. Ha! A Valkyrie on holiday. I like it, but Odin will not. He wipes a tear from the corner of his eye, still chuckling. Overhead, the clouds rumble with paternal disapproval, a low growl that makes shutters tremble. The scent of rain edges into the air, though no drops fall. Ravens circle high, their wings slicing the sky like warnings. Loki, now selling roasted nuts alongside his tickets, cackles with delight. "Oh, this is better than theater." Shall I narrate Act 2? He flips a coin and catches it. Green fire dancing between his fingers. The children cheer. Adults crane their necks. He begins to hum a tune that sounds suspiciously like a funeral march turned jig. Brynja mutters under her breath. This is Act 2. She wipes apple juice from her fingers and sets the core carefully back in the basket. She can feel the line tightening between her and Asgard, the invisible leash of expectation pulling. But for now she stands in the square, a woman with a basket of apples, a ribbon of fire at her wrist, and a village holding its breath around her. Above, in Hlitskjaf, Odin leans forward on his throne, one eye glinting like a storm about to break. He grips Gungnir so tightly the runes glow. Frigg watches in the shadows, fingers poised over her embroidery, but unmoving. Fate scribbles in her ledger. Incident number 5. Investigation becomes performance. She draws a tiny hammer and a basket of apples, adds a goat fainting in the corner, and sips her tea. The story, she knows, is just warming up. Thor has many qualities. Strength, loyalty, a hammer that doubles as both weapon and dramatic prop. Subtle interrogation, however, is not one of them. He has always preferred the sound of thunder to the whisper of rain. His idea of diplomacy is a firm handshake and a firmer hammer. Today is no exception. He plants himself in the middle of the market, boots spread wide, arms crossed like a living barricade, and booms, "Are you a Valkyrie or not?" The words ricochet off barrels and beams, startling a flock of pigeons and sending 3 apples rolling off a cart. The air tastes suddenly of iron and anticipation. Brynja, ribbon burning faintly at her wrist under the sleeve of her tunic, smiles serenely as though she's being asked about the price of bread. Her calm is not a mask. It's a weapon. "Define Valkyrie," she says, her tone honeyed and edged like a blade. Her eyes catch the light of the morning sun, and for a heartbeat Thor sees not a villager but a horizon. The villager's gasp is one, an inhale that draws the square tighter. Solveig covers her mouth, eyes darting between Brynja and Thor. Arn mutters, "She's so brave," right before tripping over his own bucket and landing with a clatter that breaks the spell for a heartbeat. A goat bleats mournfully, as if sensing its cue in a play it didn't audition for. Thor frowns, brow furrowing, mouth opening and closing like a man trying to recall a definition written on a scroll he never read. A Valkyrie is, winged, armored, choosing the slain. He gestures vaguely, as if that should settle it. Brynja shrugs, the movement graceful and dismissive at once. "Do I look winged?" she asks, tilting her head. Thor tilts his head, too, squinting. No. His eyes flick briefly to her shoulders, as though wings might suddenly sprout just to spite him. "Armored," she continues, voice patient, almost instructive. Thor squints harder. "Not currently." His gaze lingers on the simple tunic, on the ribbon, on the way she stands like a drawn bow despite the plain cloth. Choosing slain mortals in this market. Brynja's voice dips, playful now. She gestures at the stalls of apples, bread, and slightly traumatized goats. "Any bodies?" Thor scans the market, his nose wrinkling at the scent of cheese, fish, and mead. No! He sees only children with wooden toys, women with baskets, a blacksmith selling horseshoes, and a goat that looks ready to faint again. Then, clearly, Brynja says sweetly, "I am not a Valkyrie." She spreads her hands as though concluding a lesson. Her ribbon pulses once beneath her sleeve, unseen by all but felt by some. The villagers cheer. It is the kind of cheer that says, "We don't believe her, but we adore the performance." They clap, stamp their feet, exchange knowing glances. Children mimic her shrug. An old woman chuckles and spits into the dirt as if to ward off whatever omen this is. Even the goat gives a tentative bleat, perhaps applause in its own language. Meanwhile, Loki has escalated his rooftop enterprise. Not only is he selling tickets, he now hosts a betting pool with the efficiency of a seasoned showman. A makeshift sign painted in bright green letters reads, "Valkyrie or not, wager now." He jingles a pouch of coins, eyes glittering with mischief. 5 to 1 odds she admits it by sundown, he calls. 10 to 1, Thor drags her back anyway. 20 to 1, the goat interferes again. Coins clink as eager hands reach up. Children place bets with turnips, carrots, even buttons. Loki takes them all, bowing like a priest accepting offerings. Thor, however, is not satisfied. His frown deepens, lines etching his forehead like storm clouds. He scratches his beard, eyes narrowing. "But you smell like battle. You carry yourself like steel. And your eyes..." His voice trails off, the accusation more confession of awe. Brynja cuts him off gently, her tone neither sharp nor soft, but final. "My eyes are my own." The words hang in the air like a bell tolling. It is such a Valkyrie thing to say that 3 villagers faint from dramatic impact, crumpling like dropped cloaks. One of them, Arn, tries to get up immediately, muttering something about the dust. Up in Asgard, Odin groans, palm dragging down his face. She is toying with him. His voice vibrates through the halls, shaking a few hanging shields. Ravens glance at each other, as if debating whether to deliver the news or flee. Frigg mutters, she is surviving him, a hint of admiration in her tone. Fate, sipping tea in a corner of timelessness, doodles lightning bolts in her ledger and writes. Incident number 6. Interrogation devolves into theater. She adds a little goat icon next to it, just because. Back in the square, Thor finally throws up his hands, the gesture scattering a few curious pigeons. "Fine," he bellows. "If you're not a Valkyrie, then prove it." His hammer hums faintly at his side, a warning note. Dance at the feast tonight. Valkyries do not dance. They only march. He says it like he's offering an out, but it lands like a challenge. A test. A scene. The crowd gasps again. A challenge is better than confession. A test means spectacle. Faces light up with anticipation. Someone whispers, "Tonight," as though a festival just became a prophecy. Bryn just sighs, glances at her ribbon, and mutters under her breath, "I did not take sabbatical for this." The ribbon pulses once, warm against her skin, not angry but amused. She can almost hear Fate's quill scratching. But of course she will, because dancing, as she knows too well, is louder than war. It is the one act no armor can disguise, the one gesture that reveals the rhythm beneath restraint. And tonight, under torches and too much mead, she suspects her secret will no longer stay hidden. Somewhere above, Odin shifts in his throne. Somewhere to the side, Loki sharpens his grin. And somewhere deep inside her, Brynja feels the beat of wings she has not yet unfurled. The feast begins with torches, laughter, and entirely too much mead. Smoke from roasting meat curls upward, mixing with the glow of lanterns strung across the square. Fiddlers tune their instruments. Children dart between benches. Dogs leap underfoot hoping for scraps. The villagers gather in the square eager for bread, music, and, let's be honest, drama. After all, they have been living inside a saga for days now, and sagas, they have learned, are exhausting without an intermission. Tonight is supposed to be that intermission. But tonight, Thor has demanded proof. And proof, apparently, means dancing. Brynja sits at the edge of the crowd on a rough-hewn bench, ribbon hidden beneath her sleeve, telling herself she will sway politely, maybe clap in rhythm, then retire gracefully before disaster strikes. Her fingers toy with the edge of her cup. The mead is sweet but heavy, a reminder of choices blurred by ritual. Unfortunately, fate has already tuned the fiddles. She can almost feel the Norns at their loom, leaning closer, threads humming with mischief. The music begins. Drums pound like distant thunder. Flutes trill, weaving bright notes through the night air. Strings follow, the bows rasp turning into melody, and soon the square pulses with rhythm. The villagers cheer and whirl into the circle, skirts spinning, boots stomping, hands clapping. The goat bleats as if announcing the first act. Thor, looming over the crowd like an overly dramatic thundercloud, points at Brynja. "Dance!" His voice is a dare wrapped in a grin. The crowd takes up the chant instantly, delighted by the reversal roles. Dance! 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 Even the goat bleats in time, stamping its hoof like a drum. Brynja exhales, sets down her cup, and steps into the circle. For a moment, the world contracts the space between her and the villagers' expectant eyes. At first, she moves simply, carefully, like a mortal woman who has absolutely nothing to prove. A turn here, a step there, a polite smile. Her ribbon stays hidden, her wings folded tight, her breaths measured. She thinks of all the times she watched mortals dance on the edge of battlefields, feet moving not from joy but from survival. She tells herself this is just another mask. But dancing is muscle memory, and muscle memory betrays. The rhythm under her feet is older than Midgard, older than war. Her steps sharpen, her spins lengthen. Her braid whips through the air like a banner on a battlefield. Sparks flicker where her boots touch the stones. The ribbon pulses beneath her sleeve, each beat echoing in her veins. She forgets herself. She remembers rhythm. She remembers who she was before she chose a gap century. And suddenly, the square is silent except for the music, and every eye is on her. She is radiant, terrifying, beautiful, absolutely, unmistakably Valkyrie. For the villagers, it's like watching a story peel itself out of a tapestry and step into the firelight. Time slows. Even the fiddlers hesitate but keep playing as though compelled. Her shadow stretches across the square like wings, though her wings remain hidden. Children gape, mouths open, forgetting to breathe. Arn drops his mug. The crash breaking the hush, but not the spell. Mead spreads across the stones like liquid gold. Solveig claps her hands over her mouth, eyes wide, tears glittering. Thor blinks, jaw slack, as if seeing her for the first time and also for the 100th. Oh, he mutters, a god reduced to understatement. On the rooftop, Loki leaps to his feet, nearly spilling his bedding slips. He cackles loud enough to rattle roof tiles. She dances. Double the bets. Triple them. Who had Valkyrie ballet reveal on their scroll. Pay up. Coins rain into his lap as villagers who'd bet against this moment groan. He fans himself with parchment slips. This is better than the time father tried to sing an incantation and summon 3 ducks. Brynja realizes too late what she has done. The music falters as the fiddlers, sensing something divine, miss their cue. She stops abruptly, cheeks flushed, ribbon burning to the fabric of her sleeve. For a heartbeat, she is a statue of light in the center of the circle. There, she says breathless. Satisfied, her voice is low, but the square hears it as a bell tolling. The crowd erupts in cheers. Not polite applause, but a roar that shakes the air. Some fall to their knees. Others clap until their palms redden. They do not know whether to worship or celebrate. So they do both. Thor rubs the back of his neck, embarrassed, his hammer humming faintly with residual rhythm. That was not what I expected. Then don't ask Valkyries to dance, Brynja mutters, storming out of the circle, braids swinging like a whip. She pulls her sleeve down over the ribbon, but it's too late. The image is burned into every mortal eye. A wingless angel wore disguised as a guest, revealed by her own steps. Up in Asgard, Odin groaned so loudly the halls shake. God was trembling on long tables. She exposed herself in a dance. His voice echoes off the pillars, half disbelief, half fury. The ravens on his shoulders tilt their heads, as if unsure whether to caw or snicker. Frigg hides a smile behind her hand, her eyes sparkling. At least she didn't do it with a sword, she murmurs. Fate, in the corner, doodles a tiny ballerina in the margin of her ledger, complete with winged slippers and rights. Incident number 7, exposure by choreography. She underlines it twice and adds a little goat bowing in the background. And in the village square, as if on cue, the goat faints again, legs rigid, eyes roll back, tongue out, a living exclamation mark at the end of the night saga. The villagers laugh nervously, then louder, unsure whether the laughter is for relief or reverence. Brynja disappears into shadows beyond the circle of torches, her heart pounding, knowing that the line she tried so hard to walk between hidden and revealed has finally blurred. Somewhere above, Odin rises from Hlidskjalf, his patience draining like spilled mead, his hand tightening on Gungnir. Patience, like mead, has a limit, and Odin's has officially run out. Even a god of foresight can only sip from the cup of provocation for so long before it spills over. His eyes followed every whisper, every murmur of Brynja's name from one hamlet to the next. He has watched mortals, one sheep, stand like spears because of her. He has seen his own son hesitate, and his trickster grin wider. He has tolerated, but only in the way a storm tolerates a ship, until the moment it chooses to sink it. From Hlidskjalf, the high seat, he watches Brynja whirl across a mortal feast. The seat shows him every flicker of torchlight, every face upturned, every defiant cheer. Her ribbon glows faintly in the firelight, a pale star against mortal night. Villagers chant her name like she's both savior and entertainment. They're clapping and stomping a drumbeat under the sky. Thor stands in the middle of the square looking sheepish, great shoulders hunched as if he could disappear into his own armor. Loki is somewhere on a rooftop running the most profitable betting pool Midgard has ever seen. Parchment slips changing hands faster than ravens can fly, and Odin's one eye twitches. Enough, he growls, slamming his fist against the armrest. The throne's gold filigree trembles, spilling a faint echo of thunder into the hall. Ravens scatter from the rafters, feathers falling like dark snow. Frigg glances up from her embroidery, lips parting as if to speak, but then closing again. Fate, Sipping her tea in the corner of time, mutters, "Here we go," and doodles an exploding thundercloud in her ledger, little runes shaped like goats tumbling out of it. Lightning splits the sky over Midgard. Thunder shakes the square, rattling shutters, making mugs jump on tables. Sparks crawl along the edges of the villagers' vision like nerves. And Odin's voice booms across the mortal realm. Brynja, the word is not just a name, but a hook thrown across worlds, tugging at the ribbon on her wrist. The villagers freeze as if time is cracked. Arn drops his mug for the second time that night, ale splashing his boots. Solveig grabs his arm, wide-eyed, knuckles white. Children duck behind skirts and benches. Thor winces, as though he has just heard the first crack of an avalanche. Loki laughs so hard he nearly falls off his rooftop, clutching his bedding slips like lifelines. Even the goat collapses to its knees with a melodramatic groan, a veteran of fainting spells. Brynja, in the center of the square, exhales slowly. The ribbon on her wrist burns, no longer a gentle reminder but command. Answer. It pulses with light that seems to echo in her bones, a tug older than her wings. She feels every eye on her, mortal and divine, waiting. She lifts her chin, looks up at the storm, and says calmly, "Yes, Allfather?" Her voice is soft, but carries like a bell across the square. It is not submission, but acknowledgement. Gasps ripple through the crowd. The denial is gone. The mask dropped. And though she did not say the words outright, the truth is clear enough for every mortal ear. She is Valkyrie. Not rumor, not myth, but real and standing among them. Odin's voice rumbles, deeper than thunder and older than stone. You swore conditions. You broke them. Twice, thrice, more. Your sabbatical is revoked. Each word rolls down like a boulder, flattening excuses. The clouds churn, lit from within by blue-white veins. Gungnir hums in his grip, somewhere far above. The crowd murmurs, horrified. A sabbatical revoked sounds like exile, punishment, doom. Concept the villagers don't understand in divine terms, but feel in their guts. Children clutch their mothers tighter. A pot clatters to the ground. Forgotten, the goat, for once, stays down. Brynja, however, doesn't flinch. I broke them to protect mortals. To honor the vow of every Valkyrie. To serve not crowns, not thrones, but the fallen and the fragile. If that is breaking rules, then yes, I broke them. Her wings stir slightly, feathers catching the stormlight like sparks. Her ribbon glows brighter with each word, a heartbeat of defiance. The villagers cheer. Solveig wipes a tear with the back of her hand, smearing soot across her cheek. Arn looks like he wants to propose with a hammer, holding it up as if it were a ring. Even the children, sensing the shape of a story, whisper her name like a prayer. In the distance, a dog howls. In Asgard, ravens pause mid-flight. Thor, ever helpful, blurts, "Father, maybe she has a point," which is precisely the worst thing he could say. Because Odin, when contradicted, does not soften. He hardens. Clouds darken like iron pulled from a forge. The air grows heavier. "Bring her back," Odin commands, his voice a chain clinking shut. Thor shifts uncomfortably. "Now!" He glances at Brynja, at the villagers, at his own hammer as if it might advise him. "Yes, now!" The order drops like a hammerhead on an anvil. Brynja squares her shoulders, ribbon glowing defiantly, eyes locked on the sky. "I am not finished here." The words are not loud, but they cut through the square, crisp as steel. Her wings fold tighter, a stance of resolve. The square holds its breath. Even Loki stops laughing for a heartbeat, sensing a new line drawn in a play he thought he knew. Thor glances at the villagers, at Loki grinning like a cat with cream, but eyes sharp, at Brynja standing unbent under the storm. His grip tightens on Mjolnir. A tremor of thunder dances across his shoulders. "This is going to be complicated," he mutters under his breath. A prince caught between two worlds, two loves, two duties. He can feel the loom of the Norns tightening around him. Up above, fate underlines her latest entry 3 times. Incident number 8, complication achieved. She sketches a little hammer and ribbon crossing like swords. Around her, the other Norns lean in, intrigued. Because this is no longer about sabbaticals. It's about choice. And choice, as everyone knows, is louder than thunder. It rolls across Midgard's hills, into the hearts of farmers and bakers and blacksmiths, a pulse they will remember long after the storm clears. Even Odin feels it, a beat under his own anger. In that square, under that sky, lines of power are being redrawn, not by decree but by will. And somewhere in the future, Skald will write, here is where the gap century stopped being a pause and became a path. Thor is many things, brave, strong, occasionally useful with furniture, but decisive is not one of them when his heart is caught between father and friend. And tonight, with Odin's command rumbling in his ears like distant drums of war and Brynja's defiance burning bright before him like a beacon in storm, Thor hesitates. The villagers sense it instantly. Mortals are experts at spotting cracks in divine armor. They may not read runes or hurl lightning, but they know the shift of shoulders, the tremble of breath, the weight of a pause. Whispers ripple through the crowd like wind through wheat. Will he drag her away? Will he fight her? Will he, gasp, take the bread first? Someone nervously clutches a loaf as if it might be confiscated by thunder. Brynja stands calm in the center of the square, ribbon glowing faintly on her wrist like a quiet flame. Her cloak, still damp from the last skirmish, clings to her shoulders but does not drag her down. She speaks softly, steady as a war drum. Thor, she says, you know why I came here. You know why I cannot go back yet. Her eyes do not challenge him. They invite him to remember. Thor shifts his weight, hammer heavy at his side, his great hands restless on the haft. Mjolnir hums faintly, sensing the tug of war in its master's chest. Father's orders, he mutters, the words tasting of iron. He glances at the sky, then at Brynja, then at the villagers who look at him not as a god, but as a question. And what about yours? She asks. Her voice is low, but cuts through the square like a blade through fog. The square goes so still you could hear a goat blink. Yes, the goat has recovered enough to blink accusingly. In fact, it stamps its hoof as if to punctuate the silence. Even the torches seem to lean inward. A child drops a pebble, and everyone hears it hit the stones. Up above, Odin's storm swirls darker, clouds churning into a single great whirlpool of night. Do not falter, Thunderer, his voice commands, shaking the cobblestones, rattling shutters, making birds burst from rooftops. His words are not merely sound but weight. Thor's fingers flex on Mjolnir, sparks crawling up his arm. His jaw tightens, but still he does not move. And then, inevitably, Loki interferes. With applause, he leaps from the rooftop into the square, landing with a flourish that somehow does not break his ankles. His cloak spins around him like a stage curtain, scattering a few startled pigeons. "Bravo!" he cries, voice ringing with mock delight. The tension, the loyalty, the betrayal. This is better than any saga I could have written. But tell me, dear brother, whose side are you on? The Allfathers or the Valkyries? He twirls his dagger once, letting it catch the torchlight like a star. Thor growls, which is not an answer. It rolls out of his chest, low and dangerous, but it does not clarify where his hammer will fall. The villagers lean forward, waiting, their faces pale and intent. They are holding their breath without realizing it, like gamblers waiting for a die to settle. Brynja's eyes soften, not pleading, just steady. She has learned mortals survive storms not by fighting thunder, but by waiting for it to pass. She waits now, wings tucked tight, ribbon pulsing. Loki clicks his tongue, circling them as though they are chess pieces. Come now, Thunderer, pick a side. Nothing worse than a saga climax. Above, the clouds swirl into a fist. Odin's eye glints like ice. His presence thickens the air until it tastes of iron and old secrets. Choose, he rumbles. Now. Finally, Thor exhales. It is not a shout, not a declaration, but a sound of armor shifting, of something loosening inside him. I need time, he says, voice low but audible. His shoulders slump a fraction, then square again. Mjolnir dims slightly, the hum softening. Odin roars. There is no time. His voice slams into the square like a wave. Lightning flashes, etching every face in stark relief. Fear, defiance, confusion. The goat bleats nervously but stays on its feet this time. Then make some. Loki chirps, grinning, unfazed by the storm. Honestly, Father, you hoard eternity like it's mead. He tosses a roasted nut in the air, catches it with his teeth, and winks at a terrified child, as if this is all a play for his amusement. The storm rages. Clouds twist and coil. The villagers scatter to the edges of the square, pulling children behind them, clutching their tools but not yet fleeing. The smell of rain and ozone saturates everything. A sign creaks, a dog whines, the goat lowers its head and braces. And in the middle of it all, Brynja ties her ribbon tighter, the fabric flaring like a living brand, lifts her chin and declares, "My gap century is not over. I will not return. Not yet." Her voice is steady, a lighthouse in a black sea. Each word is a stone dropped into a river of prophecy. The words crash louder than thunder. For a heartbeat the storm falters, lightning pausing mid-fork, wind dying as though inhaling. The villagers feel like a pulse through the ground, a suspension, a breath before something breaks. Even Odin's ravens circle more slowly, as if caught between orders. And fate, delighted, scribbles in her ledger. Incident number 9, Valkyrie versus Throne. Gap continues. She draws a small spiral in the margin, a symbol of loops not yet closed. The Norns lean in over their loom, threads trembling, the pattern shifting beneath their fingers. In that suspended moment, Thor looks at Brynja. Brynja looks at Thor. The villagers watch them both. Above, the All-Father storm hovers, undecided between striking and receding. And in the center of it all stand the Valkyrie who refuses to kneel, a thunder god caught between love and loyalty, and a village that has begun to believe that even gods can hesitate. When gods cannot command, they scheme, and Odin, though weary of memos and goats, still knows how to set a trap. His patience is a net stretched across centuries. His plans are rivers that look like roads until you're already walking them. He has lost the hall's silence to Brynja's defiance once. He will not lose it again without trying to bind her. The morning after Brynja's defiance, the storm clouds vanish. The sky is bright, clear, too perfect, blue as polished steel, sun sharp enough to cut, which, as every Valkyrie knows, means danger. Mortals call it good weather. Brynja calls it bait. The sudden calm after fury, the sweetness before the snare. Her wings twitch under her cloak as she walks through the square. Even the goat looks uneasy, chewing but not swallowing, eyes rolling as though it senses a trick in the air. In the village square, a messenger appears. Not a raven this time, but a woman in a silver cloak, eyes downcast, voice trembling. She seems to shimmer slightly, as if not entirely built for mortal air. "The next town is under attack," she cries. "Raiders at the gates. Innocents trapped. Who will defend them?" Her words carry the rhythm of panic, but also the precision of rehearsal. Brynja notices the pause before innocence, the practiced tremor entrapped. A battle call, carefully crafted to lure her back into the role Odin claimed she abandoned. The villagers panic anyway. Mothers clutch children as if shielding them from a story that is suddenly too large. Arn grips his hammer, as if courage can be forged from clumsiness. Knuckles white. Solveig straightens, determined, though her hands shake, her lips press into a thin line of resolve. The goat backs into a corner of the square but doesn't bolt, ears flicking nervously. They don't see the seams in the trick. They see only the plea. And Brynja feels her blood roar, old instincts stirring like wings unfurling. She knows it. She sees the seams in the trick as clearly as runes on a stone. And yet she cannot ignore it. Every feather on her back remembers the cries of mortals. Every scar on her wrist remembers why she broke the rules in the first place. Thor stands awkwardly beside the messenger, jaw tight, eyes shadowed. The sun glints off Mjolnir's head, but it does not shine on his face. "Father's orders," he mutters again, voice low enough that only Brynja hears. It is not an excuse, but a confession. Brynja looks at him sharply. "And yours?" Her eyes pin him the way Odin's used to pin her, a question like a blade. Thor doesn't answer. His shoulders twitch, but no words come. He stares at the ground as if it might offer guidance. Loki, naturally, lounges on a fountain, peeling an apple with a dagger that is entirely too ornate for such a mundane task. He leans back, ankle crossed over knee, grin slicing through the tension. "Oh, the drama," he sings. "A test disguised as duty, a trap wrapped in tragedy. Careful, Brynja. Step into this, and you're back on the All-Father's leash." His dagger flicks off an apple peel, the curl falling into the water like a question mark. The villagers, however, are not gods. They don't see the trap, only the need. Solveig grabs Brynja's hand, palm sweaty, eyes bright. "Please, if you can help, you must." Her voice cracks but holds. Around them, more villagers murmur their pleas, some out of fear, some out of a flickering new courage. Arn nods, earnest and clumsy. "They'll die without you." He nearly drops his hammer in his hurry to stand straighter. Behind him, a child clutches a stone, too big for her pocket, eyes huge. Brynja closes her eyes. The ribbon burns at her wrist, but this time it doesn't feel like restraint. It feels like choice. It pulses once, then steadies, as if waiting for her decision. In that heartbeat, she remembers why she came to Midgard at all, not to observe, but to walk among. When she opens her eyes again, her voice is steady, ringing across the square like a bell. "Then I will help, not because Odin commands, not because I am Valkyrie, because I am here, and mortals deserve more than schemes." Her wings unfurl just a little, feathers catching the morning light, not as a threat, but as a promise. The villagers cheer, not the raucous cheer of victory, but a rough, grateful sound like a sigh turning into a roar. Solveig squeezes her hand. Arn beams as though the sun has agreed to walk among them. Children tug at their parents' sleeves, pointing at Brynja with eyes wide as dawn. Thor exhales, torn. He runs a hand over his face, leaving a streak of ash on his cheek from yesterday's battle. "If you do this, Father will call it treason," he says, voice almost a plea. Brynja meets his gaze. "Then let it be treason." The ribbon flares brighter, as though echoing her resolve. She does not flinch, and just like that, the village chooses. Not with speeches, not with oaths, but with movement. They gather their tools, their courage, their stubborn hearts, and they stand beside her. Farmers with pitchforks, bakers with rolling pins, blacksmiths with hammers, children with stones too big for their pockets. Not warriors, not heroes, just mortals, her new allies. They form up in a crooked line, but it is a line nonetheless. Even the goat steps forward, head lowered, as if ready for its part in the legend. Up in Asgard, Odin watches through a pool of still water, one eye burning storm dark. "She defies me still," he mutters, more to himself than to the hall. His hand tightens on Gungnir. The runes flare, echoing his frustration. Ravens shift uneasily on their perches. Frigg, standing in the shadow of a pillar, does not speak but tilts her head, eyes following the faint glow on Midgard. In the corner, Fate doodles little pitchforks in a ledger and writes. Incident number 10, mortals pick sides. The ink dances briefly, forming a goat before sinking into the page. And Loki? He sells tickets again. Of course. Little parchment slips appear in his hands, ink wet, promising front row seats to act for the price of copper coin or favor owed. He jingles the coins already collected and winks at the goat. "Everyone wants a good seat when the sky falls," he whispers. And below them, Brynja leads her mortals into the next chapter of a story the All-Father thought he controlled. The village has never seen a Valkyrie lead mortals into battle, mostly because Valkyries aren't supposed to. They are meant to descend after the clash, not before it. To choose, not to teach, to lift the fallen, not to stand among them. But Brynja has decided that rules are less important than people. And so at dawn, she stands at the head of a ragtag army of farmers, bakers, blacksmiths, and one goat who refuses, stubbornly and heroically, to stay behind. Mist still clings to the fields, softening the world, but around them everything is raw and real. The smell of damp earth, the ache of wooden handles in calloused hands, the tremble of hearts beating too fast. The line of soldiers looks more like a fair gone wrong. Pitchforks lean sideways. Shields wobble. Helmets are really pots borrowed from kitchens, some still dusted with flour. A boy clutches a ladle like a spear. Yet when Brynja raises her hand, silence falls as if a spell has been cast. Her ribbon glows faintly at her wrist, a thin pulse of light under pale skin. Her voice carries steady as thunder, and steadier than any of them expected. You do not fight for Odin. You do not fight for crowns. You fight for each other. And that is enough. Her gaze sweeps over them, not as a commander, but as a promise. For a heartbeat, their crooked line straightens. The mortals cheer. Loudly, too loudly. Someone drops a pot helmet with a clang that startles 3 chickens nearby. The goat bleats like a trumpet, tossing its head as if to say, I was born for this. Thor, standing nearby with Mjolnir resting heavily against his shoulder, mutters through clenched teeth, Father's going to kill me. The hammer hums faintly, sensing his unease. He shifts his weight, armor creaking, eyes on Brynja as if trying to memorize her before everything collapses. Loki naturally appears on a rock with a bag of roasted nuts. No one sees him arrive. He is simply there, like a punchline waiting for its joke. Correction, he says, tossing a nut into the air. Father will try to kill you, and then complain about paperwork. He pops the nut into his mouth and grins at the villagers. Meanwhile, I'm enjoying Act 3 of this tragic comedy. He gestures broadly as though the mist itself is a curtain rising. The battle, when it comes, is clumsy and loud. Raiders storm the next town with axes and fire, expecting easy plunder. Instead, they find Brynja leading her mortal allies straight into the chaos. She moves like the Valkyrie she is, blade flashing, cloak flying, ribbon blazing like a banner at dawn. Mortals follow her, inspired, stumbling but refusing to fall. They are not neat, but they are many, and for the first time, they believe their own noise matters. Arn swings his hammer wildly, managing to hit both a raider and himself, though fortunately the raider goes down first, and Arn only yelps and shakes his hand. Solveig throws flour from a stolen sack, blinding 3 men in one glorious puff of white. Screams muffled by a snowstorm of bread. The goat, against all odds, charges with its horns lowered and headbutts someone directly into a trough, bleeding triumphantly as water splashes high. And through it all, Brynja keeps them alive. She pulls a child out from under a burning cart, her wings shielding him from falling debris. She catches a blade meant for Arn on her own gauntlet and twists it away. She steadies Solveig when the girl nearly slips on blood-slick stones. She does what Valkyries do best. Protects the fragile moments, the almost deaths, the near misses. Except this time, she is not choosing the slain. She is choosing the living. Her ribbon glows hotter, the threads unraveling and reweaving with each life she preserves. Up in Asgard, Odin grips Gungnir so tightly the spear hums like an angry hornet's nest. From the high seat, he watches through thought and raven eyes, and his jaw clenches. She turns mortals into warriors. She makes them believe they can stand against fate. This is dangerous. His voice is low, but shakes the rafters of Alisjaff. Frigg watches quietly, fingers lace in her lap, or hopeful. Her eyes follow the faint glow of Brynja's ribbon even from this distance, a thread of light in Midgard's dark tapestry. Odin growls, a sound like mountains grinding. Hope breaks chains only to forge worse ones. He turns a spear, watching runes flare and fade. Fate, doodling in her ledger with a quill of starlight, writes, Ensign number 11, mortals discover teamwork. Go victorious. She taps the page, amused, but the ink trembles before sinking in, as if aware of the weight behind the humor. And Thor, caught between his father's fury and his friend's defiance, swings his hammer anyway, this time not in the fight quickly, but to shield Brynja's flank. Lightning arcs from Mjolnir to a raider's blade, shattering it before it can reach her. Just this once, he mutters under his breath, jaw tight. I'm only here to keep balance. But even he hears the hollowness of his excuse. Balance. Loki cackles from his rock, tossing nuts to the cheering children who gather behind him as if he's running concessions at a coliseum. Is that what we're calling treason now? His smile is bright, but his eyes flick nervously to the sky. When the battle ends, the raiders flee. The village still stands, and mortals cheer Brynja's name. The sound is rough and untrained, but it shakes the air nonetheless. Children climb onto carts to chant louder. Someone lifts the goat onto a table like a trophy. The ragtag army, muddy, bruised, pothelms dented, looks at each other with something new in their eyes. Not just survival, solidarity. Brynja does not raise her sword in victory. She lowers it gently, point to the earth, whispering to herself, "This is what a Gap century should be." Her wings fold around her shoulders like a cloak. Feathers darken with soot. She looks at the villagers, at Thor, at the horizon. She feels the weight of every life she saved and knows the reckoning it will bring. And the sky above grows darker. Clouds gather in a spiral, a bruise forming over Midgard. Odin's patience has sharpened into a weapon. In Valistjaf, the All-Father rises from his throne, Gungnir already humming with stormlight. Frigg closes her eyes. Fate's quill hovers, then writes a new line in ink that glows like a warning. Ensign number 11, Gap's century no longer Gap. Conflict inevitable. The loom trembles. Threads knot. Down in the village, mortals go on cheering, unaware of the storm already reaching for them. Brynja tilts her head back, eyes narrowing at the sky, ribbon flickering. She knows what's coming. But for this breath, for this fragile moment, the village stands and she stands with it. A Valkyrie choosing the living, even as the gods above choose war. The village is still celebrating its improbable victory when the sky splits open. Not with gentle twilight, not with summer stars. No, with storm. A rent of black and silver tears across the heavens, as if some colossal seam has been ripped. Wind howls down like a living thing, scattering petals, lifting skirts, knocking tankards from hands. Torches sputter and go out. Even the smell of roasted meat from the feast turns acrid, swallowed by the metallic tang of lightning. Odin has had enough. His voice booms across the rooftops, rattling shutters and spilling mugs of mead. Brynja, come forth. The sound is a hammer blow, reverberating in bones, shaking the square itself. Pigeons burst from the steeple. A dog howls once and hides under a cart. Mortals freeze mid-cheer, smiles faltering like candles snuffed by a gust. Children clutch skirts and sleeves. An old man drops his cup, watching it roll toward the cracked stones. The goat faints for the third time in as many days, legs stiff as boards, tongue lolling in theatrical despair. Brynja, standing in the square with her ribbon still glowing faintly like a coal in ash, exhales. She has known this moment would come. She feels it like an echo of prophecy ringing in her chest. Thor steps forward, hammer heavy at his side. Rain beads on his shoulders, running down his knuckles. "Father, wait," he begins, voice pitched between plea and warning. But Odin's voice cuts sharper than lightning. "You swore and you broke your oath. You raise mortals against raiders. You turn a sabbatical into rebellion. You defy me in public." Each accusation slams down like a drumbeat. The storm above answers with growl, flashing white veins through black cloud. Ravens circle, their cries like fragments of judgment. The villagers murmur, frightened, but they do not run. Arn grips his hammer like a shield. Fingers pale, feet planted though knees shake. Solveig steps closer to Brynja, chin lifted, eyes steady, the glow from the ribbon catching in her hair like a crown of sparks. And Brynja herself, calm, defiant, answers, "I did not defy truth. I defied fear. If mortals can stand, why should gods deny them the chance?" Her words hang in the air like a challenge tossed to the wind. The storm roars in reply, gusts whipping cloaks and hair, thunder rolling like drums of war. Sparks skitter across the cobblestones. A baby wails and is hushed, yet the villagers stay rooted, a ring of humanity around the winged woman who taught them courage. And then Loki appears naturally, because no disaster is complete without him. He pops into existence standing on a cart with a mug of ale in one hand and a scroll in the other, as if this were theater rather than the brink of catastrophe. His boots shine with wet mischief. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announces to the crowd, "what you are witnessing is historic. A Valkyrie inventing democracy while her father fumes. Donations welcome." He rattles the mug, So coins clink like applause. Brynja glares, wings twitching. Not helping. On the contrary, Loki smirks. I'm narrating. He dips his quill into ale instead of ink, scribbling runes that slither off the page. History needs a good tagline. Thor raises his hammer, but not against Brynja. He plants himself between her and the storm, boots grinding into wet stone. Lightning leaps from Mjolnir to the sky in a defiant arc, meeting Odin's clouds with his own. Father, if you strike her, you strike through me. Gasps ripple through the crowd like a wave breaking. The villagers clutch each other, eyes darting between father and son. Even Starblot, the usually unflappable war horse tethered at the edge of the square, paws the earth nervously, snorting steam. Odin's voice lowers, cold and heavy, each word dropping like a weight onto the square. Then you choose her over me. The storm darkens, pressing down until the air feels like stone on their lungs. Thor swallows hard, throat working. For a heartbeat, he looks younger, the boy who once idolized his father. Then he lifts his head, shoulders squared, Mjolnir crackling in his hand. I choose what is right. His voice does not shout, but carries anyway, a steady tone under thunder. Up in Asgard, the throne itself trembles. Golden pillars quake, banners ripple without wind. Frigg covers her mouth, eyes wide, fingers tightening on the armrest as if to hold the realm together by grip alone. The ravens exchange a glance that no one else can read. Fate scribbles furiously in her ledger. Instant number 12. Family lines fracture. Loyalty shifts. The ink glows red before sinking into page. Threads on the Norns loom tangling, knotting, spinning a new pattern. And down in the village, Brynja ties her ribbon tighter around her wrist, the fabric hot as a brand yet soothing, like a heartbeat she can hold. She whispers, low but clear enough for Solveig to hear. Then let the truth stand. The words are not just defiance but invocation, a seed thrown into soil. The storm pauses, just for a breath, but everyone feels it. The line that cannot be uncrossed, the moment when choices crystallize into fate. Rain slows, hanging in the air like beads of glass. The villagers, soaked and shivering, find themselves holding their breath, not from fear, but from the weight of something immense passing over them. Even Loki stops scribbling, sensing a turn he did not script. Above, the clouds roll inward, spiraling like a colossal eye. Below, mortals clutch their tools a little tighter. Between them stands a Valkyrie, a thunder god in a defiant village, the storm of God's wrath pressing close but held, for now, by courage and a ribbon that glows brighter than fear. The storm does not just boom from the heavens this time. It lowers, slowly. Dark clouds curl into square like ink poured into water, swirling and folding over themselves, lightning crawling through them like veins of fury. The smell of ozone stings nostrils. The hair on arms and necks rises. First comes a sound, a low, rolling growl deeper than any thunder. Then the shadow across the rooftops. And then, there he is, Odin. Not a voice, not a shadow, but the Allfather himself, cloak snapping like a banner of midnight, spear glowing, one eye bright as judgment, bright enough to make villagers squint as if staring at a sun they were never meant to see. The villagers stumble back at first, a reflex older than language, but they do not scatter. That in itself is remarkable. Mortals know when to run. Tales are full of burned villages, of gods walking like storms. Yet this time they stay, because Brynja stays. Because they stand beside her, jaw set, hammer low but ready. Because stories spread faster than storms, and this one is already theirs. They have begun to whisper it even before it ends. The night mortals did not kneel. Odin's gaze sweeps the square like a scythe. Pots, pitchforks, rolling pins, torches, children clutching sticks, and one goat that looks as though it regrets all of its life choices, its eyes rolling in dramatic despair. His mouth hardens, a straight line carved into granite. Mortals standing in my way. Solveig steps forward before she can lose her nerve. Fists tight, chin high, not in your way. With her voice quavers but does not break. The glow from Brynja's ribbon brushes her cheek, like a blessing. Arn limps beside her, hammer in hand. trying not to drop it on his other foot. His knees knock together, but he still plants himself like a post in the earth. If she's guilty, then so are we. She taught us to fight. She saved us. His words are clumsy but full of iron. The crowd murmurs in agreement, a murmur that grows into a low rumble. Farmers, bakers, children, elders, all stepping closer, not away. A fragile shield of stubborn humanity against the most powerful god in the 9 worlds. Their breath fogs in storm-chilled air. Their hearts beat in time with Brynja's ribbon. And because no disaster is complete without him, Loki slides between them all, somehow untouched by rain. He raises his hands as though conducting an orchestra, green fire flickering between his fingers. "Welcome, one and all, to the trial of the century," he crows. "On my left, Brynja, Valkyrie on sabbatical, defender of mortals, breaker of memos. On my right, Odin, all-father, memo-writer, breaker of sabbaticals. In the middle, Thor, the thunder sandwich. He spins, cloak flaring like ink spilled on marble. Loki. Odin growls, the name a warning thunderclap. "Yes, father?" Loki bats his eyes, the picture of innocence wrapped in mischief. "Be silent." "Impossible!" Loki replies cheerfully, popping a roasted nut into his mouth. The villagers laugh nervously at the exchange, which is dangerous, because Odin's patience is thin enough to cut. But humor is its own defiance. The laugh travels through the square like a spark looking for tinder. Odin slams Gungnir against the ground, and the earth cracks like an egg under a hammer. A fissure snakes between the villagers' feet, glowing faintly with lightning. The goat faints on cue, earning a single nervous chuckle from a child. "This ends now," Odin says, and his voice rattles window panes, makes dust drift from beams, makes even the bravest blink. Brynja steps forward, ribbon blazing at her wrist, voice steady as iron drawn from a forge. She lifts her chin, wings shifting slightly as if to catch more of the stormlight. "Then, let it end with truth. I will not abandon mortals for your pride. If that is treason, so be it." Each word is a nail driven into the board between them. Each word smells of rain and fire. The square shudders with silence. Even the wind seems to pause, holding its breath. The villagers do not move. They stand as though their roots have sunk into the cobblestones. Thor lifts his hammer, not high but ready, the head glowing faintly with restrained thunder, his presence a wall between Odin and those who will not kneel. The tension between father and son hums like a drawn bowstring, invisible but palpable. Loki bows dramatically, as if the curtain has just risen on his favorite act. "Ah," he murmurs to himself, "this is where the ballad takes its turn." His eyes gleam with something like fear disguised as excitement. His hand scribbles in the air with invisible ink, already writing the title. The night mortals did not kneel. And above it all, high where only seers can glimpse, fate scribbles in her ledger. Incident number 13. Mortals choose to stay. God descends. Stakes unbearable. She underlines it twice, ink splashing like starlight. Threads of possibility twitching on the Norn's loom. The air itself feels brittle, waiting to break. Every breath in the square is a question. Will the spear strike? Will the hammer rise? Will the ribbon hold? The storm presses closer, coiling like a serpent around the rooftops. Lightning flickers across Brynja's face, etching her features in white fire. Thor's jaw tightens. Solveig squeezes Arni's hand. Somewhere, the goat stirs, as if even it knows that something irreversible is about to happen. Odin's eye narrows. The All-Father stands in the square, cloak snapping, spear glowing, one eye bright as judgment. Yet in that eye, for the first time, a flicker, a glint of uncertainty, perhaps memory, perhaps prophecy. And the villagers, though they cannot name it, feel the shift. They draw one more breath, hold their ground, and wait for destiny to choose its side. Odin stands in the square, cloak billowing like a living storm, each fold rippling with the color of midnight and steel. Gungnir glows in his grasp, a shard of storm forged into a weapon, its runes sparking faintly with memories of past odes. The villagers stare, their courage fraying at the edges but somehow holding, eyes wide as if staring into the heart of a thundercloud. Thor shifts uneasily at Brynja's side, fingers flexing on Mjolnir's handle, his bulk casting a protective shadow. And Loki, of course Loki, produces a chair from nowhere and a bag of roasted nuts. "Oh, the tension," he sings, tossing a nut into the air and catching it between sharp teeth. This is my finest production yet. Above them, the sky has gone from slate to iron to something darker, a vault of bruised clouds swirling, waiting. Even the goat that has somehow followed Brynja through every upheaval edges backward, then stands firm, quivering but present. The square smells of ozone and old wood smoke. The villagers clutch whatever they can, torches, tools, each other's hands. Try to steady themselves against the weight of what they are witnessing. Odin's voice is iron hammered on an anvil. Brynja, kneel, swear obedience. End this defiance before it unravels the 9 worlds. The words roll out heavy, making the very stones underfoot vibrate. Windows shudder in their frames. Banners sag, their colors muted under the thunder's shadow. The villagers murmur, frightened, like leaves rustling before a gale. Solveig grips Brynja's hand so tightly her knuckles whiten. Arn whispers, "Don't." His eyes darting between Brynja and the All-Father like a man watching a cliff crumble. Brynja breathes deeply. The ribbon burns at her wrist, not merely glowing but pulsing, a reminder of every vow she has kept, every price she has paid, every mortal she has lifted from a battlefield's mud. Images flicker through her mind. The first child she shielded, the soldier who wept into her armor, the mothers who clutched her hands. Slowly, deliberately, she lifts her chin. "I kneel only to truth," she says, voice steady. "Not to crowns, not to fear, not even to you, All-Father." Gasps ripple through the square, sharp as arrows. Mortals look at each other, stunned, as if trying to memorize the exact wording for future generations. Thor stiffens, hammer heavy at his side, muscles drawn tight as bowstrings. Odin's one eye burns storm-dark, the storm inside him leaking into the sky. "Then you are no daughter of Asgard." Brynja does not flinch. Her wings twitch, feathers catching a glint of lightning. "Perhaps, but I am daughter to mortals now, and they will not be abandoned." Each word strikes like a bell, sending vibrations through the square, into bones of those who listen. The villagers cheer, shaky but loud, a sound torn between terror and courage. It is a kind of cheer that dares to exist in the face of doom, trembling yet defiant. Children climb onto barrels to see better. An old man beats a drum with his fists, setting a rhythm under the roar. Even the goat stamps its hoof, managing a bleat that sounds almost like agreement. Thor groans, dragging a hand down his face. "Father," she is right. The words come out like stones dragged across gravel, but they are spoken. The crowd murmurs, then hushes, sensing a boundary crossed. Odin wheels on him, cloak snapping like a sail in a gale. "What did you say?" His voice deepens, echoing off the walls, making the square feel suddenly too small. "I said..." Thor swallows, throat working, then lifts Mjolnir, setting it firmly between Brynja and Odin. Lightning arcs between hammer and spear, blue and white threads sparking like nerves firing. "I said she is right. Mortals deserve choice. They deserve protection. And she has given it when we would not." The crowd erupts, half in fear, half in awe. Some back away as the divine energies crackle. Others press closer, as if pulled by the gravity of what is unfolding. Solveig claps once, then again, then more boldly, and soon others join her. Arn faints and then immediately insists he didn't, sitting up groggily but refusing to break eye contact with the gods. Loki, leaning back in his conjured chair, cackles. "At last!" Thor grows a spine. "I had 10-to-1 odds against it." He tosses another nut into his mouth, eyes gleaming with delight. Yet beneath the grin, something like concern flickers. This drama is veering into a script even he hasn't written. Odin's face hardens, granite layered over iron. "You would raise your hammer against me?" The question is low, but the ground itself trembles as he speaks. Gungnir's point dips slightly, runes flashing like warning eyes. Thor's jaw clenches, his eyes pale blue fire. "Not against you, Father. For them." He gestures at the villagers, at Brynja, at the square itself. A gesture as old as any shield raised to protect the helpless. And with that, the line is drawn. The Allfather on one side, cloak and spear blazing, ravens shifting on his shoulders. The Valkyrie and Thunder God on the other, flanked by trembling but unyielding mortals, their faces lit by the glow of power like dawn through storm clouds. A gust of wind whirls dust and petals between them, marking the invisible divide. Above, high beyond mortal sight, fate underlines her latest entry 3 times in glowing ink. Incident number 14, sides chosen. No return. The loom of the Norns trembles as a new thread tightens, bright as fire and fragile as breath. Somewhere, Frigg presses her lips together, sensing the story tilting. The storm gathers thicker now, but different. No longer purely Odin's wrath, but a churning of choices, of futures colliding. The air itself waits, a held breath, and for the first time in centuries, Odin looks not unshakable, but uncertain. His eye flicks to Thor, to Brynja, to the villagers chanting her name under their breath. In that flicker is doubt, and in doubt is the seed of change. When gods fight, mortals usually hide. It is a sensible choice. Their stories are filled with warnings about what happens to those caught between hammer and thunderbolt. But this night, in this square, no one runs, which is impressive, because Odin has raised Gungnir, and when the Allfather raises a spear, mountains bow. The spear thrums with stormlight, lightning crawling across its shaft like serpents of living silver. Each pulse of its power makes the air snap and taste of iron. The cobblestones beneath it split, spiderweb cracks racing outward under the weight of the Allfather's fury. Roof tiles rattle, chickens scatter. Even the goat faints again, legs stiff, eyes rolling, though this time no one notices. All eyes are on the clash about to happen. Odin's voice shakes the rooftops, a sound older than the stones themselves. You would choose treason? Then feel the weight of it. His cloak of ravens flares out behind him, feathers blacker than the storm above, each one glinting with a shard of memory. The spear comes down like a thunderbolt. The world seems to shrink to that single strike. Lightning, wind, judgment descending. And Brynja does not move. She plants her feet, heels grinding into the cracked stones, and lifts her hand, her single hand, and lets the ribbon burn brighter than ever before. It glows not just gold but white, searing, a Valkyrie born in flame, threads unfurling up her arm like living runes. The stormlight slams into it, rattling the earth, and for a heartbeat everyone believes she will be shattered. Her wings tremble. Sparks fly from her feathers. The sound is not a scream, but a roar of power meeting power. But she holds. Her body shakes, her knees buckle, her breath rips from her chest. But she does not fall. Her eyes burn with tears and defiance. Around her, mortals shout, raising pots and pitchforks like shields, voices joining hers in a chorus of defiance. A boy climbs onto a barrel and beats a drum with his fists, as if the rhythm itself could hold the sky. Solveig cries out, voice breaking but strong. Arn actually lands a solid hammer blow against the ground, though he nearly takes himself out with the recoil, and still he laughs as if he struck a giant. Thor steps forward, hammer raised, his own lightning joining hers, a shield of thunder knitting itself around mortals who refuse to scatter. Sparks dance between Mjolnir and the ribbon on Brynja's wrist, a bridge of power linking God and Valkyrie and mortal. The smell of ozone deepens. Hair stands on end. Hearts pound as if the sky itself is drumming. And for the first time in a long while, Odin's spear does not pierce. It falters. The lightning flickers, uncertain. Gungnir trembles in his grip, humming a note that sounds almost like a question. The villagers gasp, stunned. Children cheer, shrill voices rising like skylarks into the storm. Someone starts chanting Brynja's name. A tremulous call at first, and soon the whole square echoes it, building like waves crashing on rock. Brynja, Brynja, Brynja. The chant rises higher than the thunder, a human chorus ringing in a hall of gods. Odin lowers a spear, face shadowed. His one eye, usually as cold as glacial water, flickers with something more complex. Anger, doubt, memory of promises he once made. You would pit mortals against me, he says, but the question lacks its usual thunderclap. It sounds like a man, not a law. Brynja, trembling but still standing, answers between ragged breaths. Not against you. Beside me, because they are not as weak as you think. Her ribbon flickers like a heartbeat, then steadies. It's light warm now instead of blinding. The square roars approval. The chant grows louder. Solveig lifts her hammer high. Children pound their feet. Even the goat manages a faint bleat of solidarity before collapsing again. Sparks of white light flicker between the villagers, as if Brynja's defiance is contagious. Up in Asgard, far above the clouds, Frigg closes her eyes, whispering. She is changing the story. Her voice threads through the branches of Yggdrasil, like wind through leaves. Fate, scribbling furiously in her ledger, underlines. Incident number 15, mortals hold against storm. The ink glows faintly, lines rearranging themselves as new futures bud. And Loki naturally leaps onto a barrel and declares, Ladies and gentlemen, I present the impossible, mortals louder than thunder. His bow is deep and mocking. Yet there is a tremor in his grin, a flash of awe he cannot hide. Even I didn't see this twist coming, he mutters to himself, scribbling notes for the saga already forming in his mind. Odin's eye flickers again. Anger, doubt, something heavier that only the oldest gods can name. The storm clouds swirl, tore between rage and retreat. Lightning crawls and hesitates, then fades into a low, sullen glow. The air softens just a fraction. Ravens shift uneasily on their perches. And Brynja, voice low but steady, says, My gap century is not rebellion. It is proof that mortals deserve to be more than pawns. She looks at the villagers, at Thor, at the sky itself. Her wings open wider, catching the last of the stormlight like a promise. The villagers cheer again, louder still. Their voices fill the square, spilling into alleys, echoing off rooftops, carried by the wind toward distant fields. And this time, Odin does not silence them. He lets the sound wash over him like a tide, a reminder that even all-fathers cannot always command which way stories flow. Above, in halls unseen, Norns pause their weaving. A new thread glows bright and white on the loom. In that glow, for the first time in centuries, the serpent of the storm loosens its coils. The night breathes, and destiny shifts ever so slightly toward the hands of those who dare to stand in the square instead of running. The storm does not vanish. It lingers above the village square, coiling in the sky like a living serpent undecided whether to strike or slither away. Lightning flickers along its scales, silent for now but hungry. The clouds press down so low that rooftops seem to shrink under their weight. Even the ravens keep to the eaves, their eyes like black beads reflecting the scene below. Odin lowers Gungnir, but the spear still hums, restless, vibrating with all the oaths sworn upon it. Each pulse is a heartbeat of power echoing through the ground. His one eye sweeps the square, over mortals clutching spears with trembling arms but unyielding faces, over Thor standing like a wall beside Brynja, and over Loki, who smirks like the cat who has already stolen the cream, scroll tucked under his arm like a prop in some cosmic play. For once, Odin does not speak immediately. That, more than thunder, unsettles the villagers. Silence from the All-Father feels like waiting for the axe to fall, a pause before the world tilts. Even the goat that has inexplicably followed Brynja into every scene stops mid-chew, sensing that something bigger than hay is at stake. Finally, Odin says, voice low, a rumble of distant mountains, You have made mortals believe they are more than clay. You have made my son question my command. And you, his eye sharpens on Brynja, you have set yourself against the order of Asgard. The words sink into square like stones into deep water. Some villagers drop to their knees. Others grip each other's hands. A child clutches her mother's skirt, but keeps her gaze fixed on Brynja, as if drawing courage from her stance. Brynja meets Odin's gaze without flinching. Her hair, damp from the storm, clings to her temples, but her wings remain half unfurled, each feather catching a glint of the lightning above. I set myself beside mortals, not against you, she answers. If that is rebellion, then perhaps the order of Asgard is the problem. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Arn faints again, toppling like a felled sapling, but no one catches him this time. They are all too transfixed by the Valkyrie's words. Somewhere in the back, an old skald mutters them under his breath, already memorizing a line for a song he hasn't yet written. Thor exhales hard, clearly regretting ever existing between his father and his friend. His knuckles whiten on Mjolnir's handle, but he does not lift it. Loki naturally claps. Oh, delicious! Rebellion disguised as philosophy. Father, I would write the saga myself, but it's happening too quickly. He scribbles furiously on his scroll anyway, runes blooming across the parchment in frantic strokes, already planning the Valkyrie who talk back. Odin's jaw tightens. You think words shield you? You think mortals chanting your name makes you stronger than prophecy? His voice rises, wind surging with it, making banners crack like whips. Brynja's ribbon glows brighter, white fire licking her wrist, threads tightening like a living flame. Not stronger than prophecy, she says steadily, but stronger than fear. The villagers cheer, first a murmur, then a wave of sound. Solveig, the blacksmith's daughter, raises her fist high, defiance sparking in her eyes. Even the goat manages a heroic bleat, startling itself but holding its ground. The storm rumbles in answer, as though deciding which side take. Odin's silence deepens, a silence that tastes of iron and inevitability. And in that silence, far away where only seers can see, fate writes calmly in her ledger. Incident number 16. The Allfather hesitates. The story bends. A single drop of ink falls from her quill, vanishing before it hits the page below. But hesitation is not forgiveness. Odin straightens sharply, cloak snapping like a sail. Brynja will face trial in Asgard. Mortals will not shield her. Even Thor will not shield her. If she believes her vow worth the cost, let her pay it before gods. The villagers erupt, shouts, protests, pleas spilling over one another like a breaking dam. Some cry her name. Others curse Odin under their breath. Arn regains consciousness only to faint again at the thought of divine justice. Solveig grabs Brynja's hand, whispering fiercely, "Don't go. Don't let them take you." Brynja squeezes back, her palm warm despite the cold rain. Every vow is a price. If this is mine, I'll pay it. She lets go gently, as one releases a bird that must fly. Thor growls, low and dangerous. "Father, if she stands trial, I stand with her." He plants Mjolnir's head into the ground, thunder flickering up the handle. For a moment, he is less a prince than a barricade of flesh and storm. "Fine." Odin snaps, his patience cracking like ice. "Both of you, before the High Council." His decree rolls outward, sealing itself in the fabric of the 9 worlds. Loki leaps onto his barrel, spreading his arms wide in mock triumph. And thus begins Act 4, he crows. A courtroom drama, starring one defiant Valkyrie, one conflicted thunder god, and one Allfather who really needs a vacation. His grin glitters, but his eyes flick nervously to the sky. He knows storms within storms. No one laughs, not even Loki, because beneath the humor, the air carries away to what comes next. Chains of gold and laws older than language, the high hall's cold marble waiting for new footsteps, and a judgment that may not only shape Brynja's fate, but tilt the balance between gods and mortals forever. The storm coils tighter, and in its heart the serpent chooses not to strike. Yet, trials in Asgard are never quiet affairs. They are spectacles, part politics, part theater, part divine intimidation. And Brynja's trial is the biggest production in centuries. Word of it had traveled on raven wings and whispering winds. Even frost giants at the edge of Jotunheim had paused to listen for echoes. In the high hall, banners of storm blue and gold hung heavy, each one embroidered with past victories, each one now seeming to watch the proceedings with woven eyes. The hall is packed beyond its columns. Gods crowd the benches, their voices buzzing like hornets, stingers ready. Valkyries line the walls, feathers and armor catching torchlight in restless flickers, some glaring, some secretly proud, their fingers brushing the ribbons on their own wrists. Thor stands awkwardly at Brynja's side, a mountain of muscle in ceremonial mail, hammer far too large for courtroom etiquette. Every time he shifts, the marble floor trembles. Above them, Odin presides on the throne, one eye burning storm dark beneath a brow carved by centuries of command. And then, of course, there's Loki. He struts in late, as always, making lateness into an art form. His cloak is several sizes too dramatic, embroidered with silver runes that crawl and rearrange themselves like snakes. In his hand, he carries a scroll he absolutely did not read, but wields it as if it were a sword. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announces, voice carrying like a trumpet, "I shall serve as Brynja's lawyer." Odin pinches the bridge of his nose, a gesture more human than God. "You are not a lawyer." "Exactly." Loki grins, teeth bright as foxfire, "which means I can't lose by the rules." He bows with a flourish that sends a ripple of suppressed laughter down the benches. "Besides, who else would dare?" The hall groans as one, a sound of doom and entertainment mingled. Even the great ravens on the rafters rustle their wings in what might be exasperation. The charges are read out in a voice like chiseled granite. Defiance, oath-breaking, elevating mortals, undermining Asgard's order. Each count lands like a hammer blow. Brynja listens silently, ribbon burning faintly at her wrist, its threads glowing and dimming with each accusation as if alive. When asked to plead, she rises, shoulder square, and says calmly, "I plead truth. Whatever name you give it, that is all I have done." Gasps ripple through the hall, a living tide. Some gods murmur admiration, leaning forward despite themselves. Others hiss, their faces massive outrage. The smell of ozone and anticipation thickens the air. Thor clears his throat, voice loud enough to shake the shields on the walls. She is right. Mortals fought beside her. They lived because she stood with them. That is not treason, it is courage. His hand tightens on Mjolnir, as though daring anyone to disagree. Odin slams his spear against the floor. It is rebellion. The word strikes like a lightning bolt, splitting the hall's murmur into silence. And Loki, never one to miss an opening, leaps up on a bench. "Objection!" he cries, pointing the unread scroll at Odin like a wand. "If helping mortals live is rebellion, then what does that make us? Are we guardians or tyrants? Think carefully before you answer, because I've already started drafting the pamphlets." His eyes sparkle with mischief and something sharper, perhaps conviction, perhaps strategy. The hall explodes into shouting. Gods yell over each other, voices overlapping like waves in a storm. Valkyries whisper fiercely to one another, torn between oath and instinct. Thor bangs Mjolnir on the floor for order, but each strike only makes the noise worse, sending sparks of power crawling across the marble. Even the great doors of the hall rattle on their hinges. Brynja stands silent, steady, as the storm rages around her. She lets the noise wash over her like a tide over stone. Her ribbon pulses once more, a heartbeat of silver flame, and then steadies. She knows what is coming. She has known since the first mortal raised a blade beside her and called her sister. At last, Odin raises his hand. Silence crashes down with the weight of a falling mountain. His one eye fixes on Brynja, pinning her like a hawk pins prey. "Enough games. Do you regret your choices?" The hall holds its breath. Even the flames of the torches lean inward. The air itself seems to shiver. Brynja lifts her chin. "No, I regret nothing. Mortals deserve more than silence. They deserve our strength. If that is rebellion, then I will wear it." Her voice is clear, but behind it is a tremor of prophecy, a hint of the sagas yet unwritten. The words fall like thunder, rolling through the hall and out into the 9 worlds. In that moment, her wings flare slightly, just enough for feathers to catch the torchlight like shards of dawn. Loki claps slowly, the sound sharp as coins on stone. "Ladies and gentlemen of the council," he purrs, "I rest my case." His grin is not only triumph but dare, thrown at the throne like a gauntlet. Odin's jaw tightens, the lines of his face like carved granite. He leans forward, voice low but carrying, "Then judgment is clear." Up in the shadows of the rafters, the 3 Norns exchange glances no one else can see. Fate scribbles in her ledger. Incident number 17, verdict looms. No escape. Her pen drips a single bead of ink that falls like a black star and vanishes before it hits the floor. and the hall braces for a sentence that could change the 9 worlds. Even the marble seems to tense, waiting for the echo of destiny to become sound. The hall of Asgard held its breath, a hush so profound it seemed carved out of the marble itself. Even the torches along the high columns flickered, flames leaning as if straining to listen. You could hear the faintest things, the rustle of a raven's feather high in the rafters, the slow creak of a wooden bench under some lesser god's shifting weight, and yes, the nervous bleat of a goat someone had smuggled in, its sound absurd yet strangely fitting. In this hall, nothing was too small to be part of the myth. All eyes fixed on Odin as he rose. His spear, Gungnir, caught the light in 100 fractured glints, like shards of captured lightning. His cloak, woven with storm and night, fell heavy from his shoulders. The one-eyed gaze swept the assembly, each god and goddess, each Valkyrie, each lurking trickster, until it landed on a figure at the center of the floor. "Brynja," he declared, and his voice rolled outward like distant thunder, echoing through marble and memory alike. "You broke your oath. You stood against my decree. You raised mortals to believe themselves equals. For this, the sentence is exile." Gasps rippled through the hall, like a stone breaking the surface of still water. Some mouths opened to speak, but the weight of Odin's words pressed them shut again. Thor stepped forward despite it, hammer lifted as though his instinct was always to defend, to strike, to protect. "No, she—" "Silence," Odin commanded, and even Thor's protest collapsed into a growl. The word was not merely sound, it was law-given voice. The hammer lowered, reluctant. Brynja stood tall in the middle of the ring of gods. The ribbon of her vow glowed faintly on her wrist, threads of silver and ember interlacing like a living promise. Her wings, folded tight, trembled once, then steadied. When she spoke, her voice did not tremble at all. "If exile is the price of truth, I pay it gladly. Mortals are not pawns. They are sparks, and sparks deserve to burn." A shiver moved through the assembly. Some gods sneered, their lips curling as though her words were a contagion. Others looked away, ashamed, as if caught remembering a time when they, too, had believed in something other than hierarchy and decree. A few Valkyries inclined their heads, almost imperceptibly, but enough to show they felt the same pull, the same ribbon tugging at their own wrists. And Loki, of course Loki, could not resist. He leapt onto a bench with feline grace, boots scattering goblets, spreading his arms wide like a conductor calling for applause. "Exile! How dramatic! How poetic!" he crowed, his grin sharp as a blade. "Honestly, Father, you should thank her. Do you know how boring eternity gets without scandal? Without someone brave enough to turn the board over?" Odin ignored him, though the muscle at his jaw twitched. With a heavy hand, he slammed Gungnir against the floor. The sound cracked the air like a storm breaking. A bolt of thunder raced along the hall's vaulted ceiling, sealing the verdict in light and sound. In that moment, Brynja was no longer Valkyrie of Asgard. She was wanderer, outcast, free. The ribbon burned once more, hot, then cold, and then dissolved into nothing, leaving only a pale scar across her wrist. A vow broken, or perhaps fulfilled in a way Odin never foresaw. The scent of ozone lingered around her like an unspoken blessing or curse. Thor stepped close, his massive hand gripping her shoulder, the hammer hanging silent at his side. His blue eyes searched hers for some anchor. "Where will you go?" he asked, voice low, roughened by the weight of too many farewells. Brynja allowed herself the smallest smile, a faint curl of lips that was more light than mirth. "Everywhere. Mortals still whisper. They still fight. They still live. If I can walk beside them, then my gaped century will never end." Her gaze drifted to the edge of the hall, beyond the doors of gold and iron, out to Midgard and the infinite roads where stories began. At the far end of the chamber, the mortals who had been summoned, petitioners, dreamers, the chosen few, cheered louder than any god dared. Their clapping, their foot stomping, their raw human voices rolled like a tide, filling the hall with something wilder than reverence. Even the goat bleated proudly, as if it understood the shape of legend. Odin sat again upon the high seat, his face sinking into shadow. He had won, but also lost. The hall's silence was no longer obedience. It was a question, sharp and dangerous. For exile does not silence a name, it spreads it. And already, Brynja's story was running ahead of her, leaping from tongue to tongue, sung by mortals in smoky halls, scratched into wooden beams by sailors, murmured as prayers by soldiers facing dawn. Skalds would carry it. Children would dream it. The All-Father could banish a body, but not a tale. Somewhere, far above, the three Norns bent over their loom, threads crossing, recrossing. Fate, closing her ledger for a moment, wrote one final line in ink that glimmered like starlight. Incident number 18. The Gap Sentry becomes legend. Loki, smirking, announced to no one in particular. Well, I did say Act 5 would be unforgettable. He hopped down, leaving a trail of overturned goblets and a faint scent of foxglove, as though even his mischief needed a perfume. Brynja walked to the great doors. Each step rang like a bell, slow and steady, echoing in the hall's high vaults. She left with her head high, wings half unfurled, her back straight not from defiance but from resolve. She was no longer bound by ribbon or crown, only by choice. And choice, as she had proven, was louder than thunder. Outside, the sky over Asgard was a riot of color, auroras twisting, clouds streaked with gold, 1,000 unseen eyes watching. She paused on the threshold, feeling the wind of Midgard already tug at her hair, the scent of earth and fire and sea rising to meet her. Beyond lay villages that would never know her name but would feel her presence, battlefields where she would lift the fallen, not to Valhalla but to dignity, marketplaces where she would whisper courage in the ears of mothers and farmers and wanderers. And so the tale spread even before her feet touched the ground below, of the Valkyrie who took a Gap Sentry and never really ended it. In taverns, they would speak of her as a winged stranger who walked beside mortals. In songs, they would call her the Flame Bearer, the Ribbon Breaker, the Wanderer of Sparks. And in the high halls of Asgard, the gods would listen to those echoes and wonder which of them would be next to feel the ribbon burn.